Hello. Good morning. I'm in my tarot space. I was going to say tarot room. There's also a bed in here, so it's like a bedroom / tarot room. That's where I'm hanging out because I want to be able to show my table when we're looking at cards like this. But anyways, good morning. I'm having my first coffee of the day. I'm like 3 sips in, so I will wake up over time. I've been awake for a bit, but not awake, not coffee awake. Anyway, good morning. I know I love this. I'm obsessed with this shirt. If it ever like falls apart, I'm gonna be so sad because this is like embroidered. I love it so much. First of all, we have a new Unicorn fan member. And so I just wanted to say a big welcome to Ben. Thank you so much for joining. I am so happy to have you. I have not done one of these live streams for like a hell a long time. So like legit raise your hand, emoji raise your hand if you remember these, because I started this series. This series came about, the idea of troubleshooting the tarot, or tarot FAQs basically, came about because of the Tarot with Training Wheels video series I did a long time ago. So that is my, hopefully like my gateway for people into like getting a basic understanding of the tarot. But that series is really precious to me. And this video live stream situation came about because during Tarot with Training Wheels, when I was rolling out those videos for the first time, periodically when the first rollout happened, like at intervals throughout that course, I would host a live stream and just kind of answer people's questions. And it sort of became a really great interactive opportunity to answer specific questions, stumbling blocks people have with reading the tarot. And so a few, I guess, disclaimery things. I have, or I guess some background info in case you don't know or you're new here. I have been working with the tarot cards since I was like 19, off and on. And obviously I bring a lot of my own personal biases, takes, opinions about how to read the tarot into this. So just know that if you're learning, it's really helpful to hear from multiple voices. Like, don't assume that like my way is the only right way to interpret something or to read something. But I really love and am super passionate about talking about this. And I love, like, I have always had an intense passion for beginners or for people who want to take things deeper. Like, A, I love teaching, but B, I have a fondness for making things accessible. That's my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing. It's what I loved about teaching yoga. It's what I love about teaching tarot. I just love giving people gateways into something that feels out of reach for them. And that is where a lot of this kind of stemmed from. So let me take a look at the comments. But yeah, if you have a couple things. If you have a question that you're going to want us to answer during the stream, I say us, I'm only one person. If you want me to answer during the stream, then members, you have a special question mark emoji that will really help. So you can use that. You can type question if you are not a member, obviously. If you can also type question in all caps, whatever's easiest for you. I don't care how you do it, but do something to grab my attention because these streams can get kind of busy. And then I will star those as I see them and we'll go through them. I do have two rough, basically, they're really all this kind of the same question. I have two from the post I put up in advance for anybody that couldn't make the stream. So we'll also talk about those. But for anybody that has a question, it doesn't matter. It basically, the only structure around this live stream is it's a question about reading the tarot or how you interpret a card or card combinations. And so I'm super stoked to get like into all of it. I also thought, because it feels super relevant and because I'm trying to actually talk about my work, I also thought we could take an opportunity to do a quick little peek at my book, Unlocking the Tarot, that's coming out this October, because that book, well, I'll show you when we do the top down, but I have so much to babble about, but I'll try not to take up too much time on that. But I think it will be helpful for those of you who are drawn to this kind of content to know, because a lot of the things I'm going to talk about in here are also in there. So I can point you to some of the things that you might be interested in for when that book comes out, whether you want to pre-order it or check it out later or check it out from your library or whatever. But at least I can give you an idea of like what you'll find in there, because a lot of the chapters in there are inspired not only by my course, Tarot with Training Wheels, but also by the kinds of questions I got asked during these streams. So if you took part in those streams, you were a part of making this book happen. If you participated in Tarot with Training Wheels and gave me any feedback, you were a part of making this happen. So thanks to everybody. But all right, so I'm going to, so don't forget, you guys, if you have questions, type question in all caps. I don't want to miss your question. And then we'll just go for as long as I have energy for this, basically. But probably we'll be here for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours or so. So I've spotted a couple questions, but yeah, in general, try to put question in there so that I can make sure I actually snag it. And I'm sorry, I'm just jumping right into it. Hello. Let me have a sip of my coffee. Hello to everybody. It's so lovely to see you all. Okay. There's some popping in. Okay. So you guys ask the questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let those roll in for a minute and I'm going to star them. And while those are rolling in, I thought I would do a little bit of an overview of the table of contents for unlocking the tarot. So let's switch the view here so you can see my table. And I'll have the cards handy because a lot of the questions are going to be card based. So these decks are both in order. But let's take a quick look at the table of contents for unlocking the tarot. And I'm going to talk through a couple of the things that I think are going to be of special interest to those of you who are in this stream. So this does have a card by card breakdown, but essentially this book is teaching tarot with training wheels in a book. It goes much deeper than tarot with training wheels because I had a lot more time, I guess you could say. Tarot with training wheels is meant to be pretty punchy. This is going to go into a lot more detail in walking you through how to choose your keyword for each card, as well as me sharing my favorite and my favorite alternates to give you a jumping off point, right? But I do explain why I pick the word that I do, and we get into all of that. So this goes into the keyword system in general. I also have a bunch here about common tarot misconceptions. So if you have questions about things like, do I have to be gifted my first deck? And a lot of those common things, but also some less common things. If you want to hear me soapbox a little bit, it'll be in there. But then I get into the majors, we get into the minors. I really dig deep into things like elemental energy as well as numerological energy and how those things contribute to how we understand the minor arcana. But I think the sections that are going to be of a special interest to this group is chapter 5, which is all about the court cards, because we're definitely going to be digging into those today. And also I have 2 chapters that legitimately, there's no page numbers on this table of contents because this is a galley copy, but like it's a proof. But there's a chapter on cards that are regularly mixed up. So let me show you an example. So this chapter is called Don't Let These Mix-Ups Trip You Up. And so let me just show you an example. So I have a detailed breakdown of, say, Death versus the Tower and those energies and how they can be read similarly, but then how they're also different. The Sun versus the World, just as an example. And then I also have a chapter in here called Making Connections, which kind of does the opposite in a way. These are cards that actually do have a connection to one another. It's not cards that are regularly mixed up so much as it's cards that have a link or a bond. So I talk about those. And then I also have, and I think when we get into card combos, that's also something that comes up a lot in these kinds of streams. Card combinations is where I walk you through my personal favorite way to conceptualize how to take cards and read them in combination, because that is where so many of us trip up. Like if you go through and you learn individual meanings for each card and you have a keyword for each card, that's powerful. That's going to be so great. But then what do you do next? That's the piece where we all, my internet did a thing, but that's where we all stumble. So I wanted to have a section that kind of walks you through that process. Now, this card combination chapter walks you through how to read cards, regardless. We're not talking spreads. This is literally like you put 3 cards on the table. How do you read them together? And so I walk through a basic, a real specific sort of process, including sample readings for how to do that. And then, of course, I also have some spreads. But I think these are the things that I think are going to catch your attention, is things like the cards that get often where the meanings kind of seem like they'd be the same. Things like justice versus judgment, which is a common question that came up in these streams. Things like I said, Death versus the Tower. These are both big upheavally changes. How are they different? And so I get into all of that in there. But then we also have, of course, just to give you an idea of what the regular card entries look like, they're quite substantial. But then for the card by cards, here's a good one. So here's the Moon. For the card by cards, they're quite beefy. This is a very word heavy book, so I'm sorry if that's intimidating, but it's meant to read very conversationally. But the thing about this is that I give you the card, obviously. I tell you what my favorite keyword is. So for the Moon, my keyword is illusion. I talk about why that's my favorite, like how that came to be my understanding of this card. And thank you guys for keeping your questions rolling in. How that came to be my card, how you can read that keyword, illusion, as a blessing, how you can read it, how you read this card if you're looking at it through the more difficult energy of it, so as a obstacle. I also talk about like how it all kind of comes together. I pull in, if it's the minors, I pull in the elemental energy, the numerological energy. I pull all that into that. And then I also give some other possible keywords. Like for the moon, I have mystery, wildness, and the unconscious as alternate keywords. So that bar, this is an epic comment. Wait, where did it go? There it is. Yeah, I wrote a word heavy book. Anyways, so it should be the kind of thing that is going to ideally help you form a personal relationship with the cards and like how you see each one, but also something that's going to empower you to, I really want it to be something that empowers you to personalize your understanding of each card, because that is what is going to open so many doors for you and how you interpret. So that was one of my main goals. But court cards. I said I was going to talk about court cards. Okay, so we're going to do this in, actually, you know what? I'll save that for when we get to that question, because it's going to be a lot. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, I have a sneeze coming. Don't feel like you have to like rush out and pre-order right now. I mean, I love those of you that are pre-ordering it. Thank you so much. That's great data for my publisher. But don't sweat it. I don't pre-order most like mass market published things, so I'm not going to feel hurt if you wait for it to come out first. Okay. Anyways, that I worded that all kinds of bad. Is this book have an e-copy, please? I believe there will be a Kindle version of the book. You should be able to check. I think I have a link down below to the Amazon page, but the Amazon page should tell you if there's a Kindle version already like prepped and ready. So yeah. Perfect. Okay. Hi, Marlena. Thank you. Yeah, I love this kind of thing. Okay, so let's start with the questions for the people that aren't here, so I don't forget to address those. So we're going to kick it off with a biggie that I think is going to come up again and again and again. So this came from a few people. But the question that I quoted is from Selenite Seer, and the question is, I definitely struggle with court cards in general, but more so knowing if it's energy versus people and how to read the court cards as an energy. So we're going to talk specifically about that question, but we're also going to talk about court cards in general. So this is where I wanted to kind of talk about the way I addressed court cards here, because it reflects my view of the court cards. So I thought that would be a helpful place to start. So let me find the intro to court cards. So I think of the court cards kind of as their own suit. So I see the court cards as working a little bit differently than the rest of the deck. Let me just put that so the book stays open for a second, okay? It's not meant to plug. I just don't want the book to flop closed. So the thing about the court cards, so let me just babble for a minute. With the rest of the deck, you can take a card, say the Seven of Swords. You can take the Seven of Swords and you can get to know what it means and get to know its energy. And then you can sort of give it a keyword. If you like the keyword method, obviously, you can give it a keyword, or you can think of it in terms of like a phrase or a sentence, or like what the general essential core meaning of that card is. And then that's it. That's all you need to know. You can, when you pull this in a reading, then you know, okay, this is talking about this kind of an energy. The reason we struggle so much, in my opinion, with the court cards is because when we see a card like this, and we know it's a court card, so we know it's operating differently and it's representing faces or people in the tarot, we immediately think, is this me? Is this somebody else? Is this an energy? How the hell do I know? But the funny thing is, when you compare that card, the Page of Swords, is it right? Back to the card I just had in my hands, which is the Seven of Swords. These both have a single person on them. We don't ask ourselves the question of this card, whether it's me or it's well, we do, but like we don't stumble because we're not thinking we have to make this a person. But with the courts, we think that way. But we don't have to think of them as a. We no more have to think of the pages as a person as the Seven of Swords. Visually, they're actually very similar. They're not. It's the title that throws us. It's the court card, the fact that it is a court card that throws us. Now, with that being said, there's so much value in bringing people and personality into your readings and being able to explore those as concepts, again, as an energy or to represent people in your life. That's a valuable practice, but you don't have to start there. So let's say you're brand new to tarot and you're like, oh my gosh, I hate the court cards. They freak me out. I don't know what they mean. Like they throw me. You can start, this is me, I'm not even talking about what's in the book right now, okay? You can start simply by treating them like any other card. Think of what the card means, and this is what I'm going to help you hopefully do in a minute. But think about what the card essentially means as far as like a core keyword or a core vibe, and then treat it like any other card in a reading. So here's how I conceptualize this for unlocking the tarot. Oh, thank you, Cherry, for advice. Yeah, Cherry says there's a Kindle version on Amazon and currently says this title will be auto-delivered to your Kindle on October 8th. Oh, perfect. I didn't know that's how pre-orders on Kindle worked. That's amazing. And quick question here just to answer real quick. Loom asks, don't you have 2 tarot classes? Is the book based on both? I would say, okay, so I have Tarot with Training Wheels, which is the free course on YouTube. And then I have 2 website courses. So one is called Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners. And Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners, do I have it handy? I don't. Oh, wait, maybe I do. No, I don't. Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners takes the concept of tarot with training wheels, and instead of teaching you 1 keyword per card, to assign 1 keyword per card, Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners takes you into a detailed deep dive into the card's energies through elemental energy and numerical energy and other energy. And when you're done, you basically create a deck that you can use that's covered in words and colors and other things. So the idea is with Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners, you're building a much more comprehensive, with multiple words, ideally, reference for each card. So you're kind of coming out of the other end, having all of these personal associations. Like this card is the 5 of Cups. So it's the energy of the 5, the energy of water, and the energy of the actual combination of those 2 things. And so we go in much deeper in Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners. I would say this is largely based on Tarot with Training Wheels, but I get into some of that elemental numerology kind of stuff in here as well. So I would say it's like in between. It goes in between, which I think is a really, really good place for it to be. And then my other course, Intuitive Tarot Reading, is wildly different than this. And I'm hoping to do in the future something kind of a book that springboards off of that course as well, because I'm very passionate about that topic and the methods that I teach in that course. Anyways, I'm getting off the rails, but that's how I work. I'm a squirrel. I get off the rails. Oh, thank you for that, Barb. Yes, we are still missing a handful of surveys for Unicorn's Journey Tarot on Kickstarter. Okay, so getting back to the courts. The way that I conceptualize them, and I'm real excited about this because I've never seen anybody do this, but in the book, what I do in here as far as the court cards is I present them to you as the concept of a sliding scale of personality. So whereas the rest of the cards we look at are sort of represent kind of an energy, right? We can see this as like, this is the energy of devastation or of a big ending or rock bottom or something. And the 9 of Swords might be the energy of anxiety or fear, the things that keep us up at night, right? With court cards, their energies are personalities. Each one of these court cards represents a distinct personality. But that feels so broad. So how do we narrow that down? How do we give that something that we can work with? And so the idea of the court cards that I present in Unlocking the Tarot is the concept that our court cards are representing, oh my gosh, this is not going to stay. Our court cards are representing a sliding scale of personality. So we have the more positive or beneficial aspect of personality, of a personality trait. And then we sort of slide over to, well, it's backwards on my camera, but then we sort of slide over to where that same exact sort of energy becomes unhelpful, harmful, or just more negative, right? Less helpful. So we have this sliding scale. So instead of thinking of the court cards necessarily strictly as people, think of them as personalities. And that is a very, very helpful reframe. And so that's what I get into in this chapter on the book is how do we reframe them as personalities? And then I share with you mine. And I encourage you to pick yours. So now I will say, if you're new to tarot, trying to figure out for yourself what the personality energy sliding scale is of the Page of Swords is probably going to feel a little out of reach. That's why I present mine, because I think they're helpful. I think they're useful, and you can just use mine. But then we take the next step, which some of you are familiar with from other people's books. This is a very well-known way of working with the court cards, but assigning that personality type to a fictional character or a very extreme version of that personality that might show up in a pop culture icon. For example, we could look at I don't know if I picked her let me just see, actually. I'm going to try to give like a non-fictional person for one of these real quick to give you an example of what a non-fictional person might work, how a non-fictional person might do a good job of representing Okay, so yeah, I didn't pick her. But for example, the Queen of Wands, we could look at her personality sliding scale, which I would say in mine is confident. This is my sliding scale for the Queen of Wands, confident to arrogant. So in her most positive aspect, the Queen of Wands is full of confidence and sass and like all this vibrance. But at the negative side of that same personality, we have arrogance. We have being like really pushy and kind of overbearing and all these kinds of things, right? So I go confident to arrogant. So it's a sliding scale from confident to arrogant, and she can exist anywhere on that spectrum. So what about somebody like Madonna? She's a larger than life personality. She's a real person, but we see her through the lens of her as a pop icon. So you could think of somebody like that who is not a fictional person. So she exists in real life or whatever, but like we can see this like larger than life persona. And that's often the case with like large celebrities. We see them in a particular lens because of their celebrity. So celebrities and pop icon or pop culture people can be useful to assign. I tend to go more fictional 99% of the time because I feel like fiction does a better job of this. But I'm all over the place. Basically, what I'm saying is the court cards, two main premises. One, a sliding scale of personality, so we can place that energy in a space and we can conceptualize that energy. So for the Page of Swords, I'll just share this one with you since we have the Page of Swords out. For the Page of Swords, where's my quartz? There we go. The Page of Swords goes from inquisitive to intrusive. So this is the question asker, right? They're curious. They're inquisitive to intrusive. And so for me, and I have an example. I'll pull this out so I can show you guys what I did here. For me, I think I picked, yeah, that's right. Alice from Alice in Wonderland is a great icon for this. She's really, really curious, but she can be super intrusive, right? She can kind of push too hard. You can see there's like the realm of politeness sometimes gets missed, right? She kind of gets too nosy maybe or too intrusive. So that's an example of what we can mean by inquisitive to intrusive as a sliding scale of personality. Okay, I swear to God, I'm going to get to the question. Okay, just give me a second. So I wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time on that because I do think it's unique. I do think it's an approach we don't see. I've never seen anywhere else where people talk about this sliding scale. So I really kind of assign 2 words and think of them as a spectrum of behavior, a spectrum of energy. So yeah, I'll just pull this out because this is actually my deck that I used while I was working on this book. So here's a good example. Here is the equivalent of the King of, what is this? King of Crystals, King of Pentacles. This is the Rainbow Moon Tarot. King of Pentacles. So I wrote on it the sliding scale. So wise and cynical. So the king, hello, can we focus please? There we go. The king slides between wise and cynical. And then I gave him the name Richard because I think of Richard Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls. This card, I think he is a great King of Pentacles energy, right? And the reason that both of these things in combination are helpful for understanding how to read the court cards in a tarot reading is because if you think of somebody that you don't know personally, I would caution against choosing the name of somebody you know personally, like strongly. But if you think of somebody you don't know personally, you think of how they would respond in a situation or what they would bring to a situation, you now have something much more comprehensive to work with in your reading. So you've got all of these cards now on your table and you're like, okay, so I have, let's pretend we had other cards here too. I'm trying not to mess up the order because we might need it here in the, there. Let's assume that's what our reading looked like. Scooch it over so you can see. So we know the 10 of Cups is an energy, right? So this might be an energy of happiness or of bliss or whatnot. And we know that this is also a very happy card. They're in order. And then we bring this curiosity to the table, this inquisitiveness. And we go, okay, we're really, really happy. So maybe we need to be curious about or dig into why. Why are we so happy? What's the root of that? Let's dig under that and see what's in there. So now I'm looking at the court card as an energy, just like I would any other card. Unless you feel like it could be related to a person. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to tell the difference. I forgot how to put these back together. Okay. So I feel like I'm all over the place. I swear I'm going to hopefully be able to make sense of all this for you. I want to know why I'm always mildly attracted to the King of Pentacles. I can't help you there. It's probably a type, right? Oh no, I've opened my Kickstarter app. Were you shopping right now, Melissa? What are you doing? Okay, let me look at the comments for a sec. And see if anything else jumps out at me. Okay, I think we're okay for now. So when we're talking about how, when you're, let's say you're doing a big spread, you got 10 cards on the table, and of those 10 cards, 3 of them are court cards, and you're like, okay, are these trying to tell me if they're a person or if they're an energy? That's the biggest place where we stumble, right? So think about it this way. First, look at them according to their energy, their personality, and then read the reading that way. Start there, right? And then decide, does that personality, in the context of the question you've asked and the spread of cards in front of you and the surrounding cards, does that personality sound like a person in relation to the situation? If it does, pull it in. If your gut is telling you this, you know what? I've just pulled the King of Pentacles, since we're talking about him. I've just pulled the King of Pentacles. I've done a relationship about love, right? And let's say it's a relationship reading for a long-term couple. And we have all these other cards on the table. We have, I'm just going to pull from this deck so that, because this one's already shuffled. So we have, let me get out of courts for a second. So we have the Ace of Wands. I have so many court cards in here. Okay. We have the Four of Pentacles, that's security. And we have the Six of Wands, which is, in this case, recognition. Okay, so we have all these energies around this. Oh, this is a terrible layout. You guys can't see. There we go. So you have all this energy, and then we have this one stinking court card, okay? We're like, okay, let's look at the health of the relationship. Let's talk about the relationship in general. Well, the Ace of Wands tells me there's lots of passion and excitement and inspiration going on in the relationship. That's good. That's like feeding the relationship. And then we also have a sense of security. Gosh, that's really great. We have the Four of Crystals. So we feel pretty locked in. We might be a little bit risk averse, or we might be a little too attached to routine, but in general, things are good. They're solid. I think a balance of something like the Ace of Wands and the Four of Crystals, or the Four of Pentacles rather, gives us that feeling of like stability and excitement in a good balance in the relationship. And then we have the Six of Wands, which to me is like recognition. It's like what's coming in that we can celebrate and that we can recognize we're doing well. And then we have the King of Pentacles. And I think of the personality of the King of Pentacles. And I'm like, well, this is somebody who is wise in their best case and cynical in their worst case. And then I look at the rest of the surrounding cards and I'm like, well, gosh, let's say I'm doing a relationship about me and Peggy. I'm like, gosh, actually, that sounds a lot like Peggy in this situation. So she is contributing to this relationship, a lot of the wisdom, but she does bring a little bit of the cynicism, which could be where we get a little bit averse to taking risks in the relationship. Maybe we can get into a rut because of the whole thing of like, why bother? That's what cynicism can sometimes be, right? Why bother? There's no point because like, whatever, people are going to screw it up anyways. So now I can go, okay, well, this is what this is more like Peggy than it is like me. So maybe this is what she's contributing to this whole dynamic energy. But we could also take a person. Let's say this didn't sound like Peggy and it didn't sound like me, and I'm reading about our relationship and I go, well, this tells me that something that maybe we do really well in the relationship is bring a lot of wisdom, which is true. We do a lot of processing, we do a lot of communicating, we do a lot of that, and we've gained a lot of that experience in our relationship over time. So I can see this as a confirmation that that's something we do well. But maybe one of the things we don't do as well, the cynicism, maybe the cynicism sneaks in the ways that we maybe undersell each other, or we don't expect enough of each other. We get a little bit like, why bother going on, right? So I'm just giving you an idea that like, if this personality or this energy doesn't jump out at me as a person in the context, then I just read it like I read any other card, and it's an energy. It's a personality. It's a quality that it brings to the reading. And this is why in the book, when I address this question specifically and head on in the introduction of this section, I specifically say that the easy answer to how to tell if a court card is an energy or a person, the easy answer is trust yourself. And the difficult answer is trust yourself. And it's hard because the thing that we try to develop, the skill we're trying to really build when we're working with tarot, is how to trust our instincts, how to trust what we think it means. And I think a lot of us want that external proof or validation that like what we think it means is actually what it means. So we look for some sort of system that will give us that. So let me give you another alternative then. If you really want or need a system that's going to tell you whether it is an energy or a person, then you could, if you work with reversals, determine that based on whether the card is upright or reversed. Like if it's upright, it's an energy, and if it's a reversed, it's a person. Now, I don't like that because I don't like generally work with reversals that much, but I have tried it. I have tried that method, and it was effective if you're consistent in how you apply it. You could also, some people have done with court cards, created a system where if the card is upright, it represents somebody else. And if it's reversed, it represents a quality within themselves, or you could flip that. That can also be beneficial. My thing is this. I think it's better personally, again, this is me bringing my own biases to the table, but I think it is much more beneficial to learn to trust yourself, to learn how to read the context of the surrounding cards and to practice that, even though it's harder, because I think it'll make you a better reader in the long run. So I know that was a very, very long-winded answer, but there was a lot of people asking this question. And so I really wanted to give it some attention and some time. So if you've asked a similar question, and you want to reword that question, or you want to like ask a follow-up question, you can always submit that and I will put it on our list. But that's kind of my approach to the court cards. I hope that was helpful. I feel like that was a long speech. So yeah, let me star this question. Ooh, okay. So this is relevant. So I'm going to answer this right now. April says, what if you're not a big pop culture person? What can you do for the court cards instead? Here's what I would suggest. Let's say you don't. Now, I personally pick fictional characters from movies and TV. And you can also Google this. You can describe. You can go in. Listen, y'all, you can go up into like Chat GPT or something. Now that AI is in our world, you could do this. You could go into Chat GPT and write out a full description of a personality type that you think that court card is. Let's say you're like, okay, I'm talking about, I'm going to just keep pulling that. Let's pull the Queen of Pentacles just to do something different. I would maybe go into Chat GPT and say to Chat GPT, okay, here's a personality, and just describe it in detail. Can you think of, or this is how I'd word it to Chat GPT because I'm a nerd and it's like I'm talking to a person, but I'll be like, can you think of a character from a TV show, a movie, an animated series, or anything that represents this personality type? And just see if it brings anything to mind. That's if you're really bad at remembering like pop culture names or fictional character references. But let's say you don't want to go down that road at all. You're like, you know what? I don't want it to be a real person. I definitely don't suggest that, because if you assign these the name of somebody you know, like I did that way back in the day, I would assign the court cards to a person that I knew. And then the problem came up when it came up in a reading, I would always see it as that person. And it really rarely was about that person. So it really screwed with my head. So I do recommend not doing that. But let's say you don't want to pick a pop culture person. You don't want to pick a fiction person. What do? You make up a person. You make up a person. You get out your journal and you literally come up with a name. Give the Queen of Pentacles a name. She's going to be Barbara. And you're going to write I'm just making this up. You're going to write a full personality profile for Barbara. Who's Barbara? What kind of person is she? What kind of person is she? Make her real to you so that when you pull her, you're like, oh yeah, that's Barbara. Right. Barbara is like really caring, but she sometimes neglects herself. She really likes to take care of other people. She loves to cook. Like she's big on like not fashion magazines. Like she likes to maybe quilt or knit or sew. And you know what I mean? So you can like create this personality profile for Barbara, who is now your Queen of Pentacles. And now she's come to life for you and she's dynamic for you. So then when you pull her in a reading, you can go like, oh, right, Barbara. So how does this kind of energy go with my reading? The reason this is so beneficial is because people are complex. None of us are just Queen of Pentacles or King of Pentacles, or like I always talk about myself as the Page of Cups. I'm not just the Page of Cups. That's just the sort of energy that I'm most aligned with. But when you dig into all of this, you start to recognize that when you pull a card, if you have a comprehensive understanding of that card, whatever that looks like for you, and with the court cards, a personality helps me a lot. If you have a personality, you can ask yourself questions like, how would this person handle this situation? How would this person, let's say you're reading about a work situation and you've got conflict with a coworker, right? And you pull the 5 of Swords and the 7 of Swords, and you're like, wow, there's some major work toxicity going on here, right? And then you get Barbara in the middle. We're now calling her Barbara. She's now Barbara to me. So you get Barbara in the middle, and you're like, well, what would Barbara do? Because she's right in between these two cards with this toxic conflict you have with this coworker. Well, Barbara would probably try to play peacemaker a little bit, right? Barbara would probably try to understand the needs of the people around her. So how could I use that as a way to conceptualize the answer to my question? And this gets a lot more dynamic when you're reading for yourself. And when you're reading for others, you really want to distill it down a little bit more, right? Bunny kisses, maybe the reverse of some of them can be Karen. I mean, I didn't say it. Okay, somebody asked what Chat GPT is. If you Google Chat GPT, you'll be able to read about it. But it's like an AI thing you can interact with and ask it questions. Don't assume it's factual and its answers, fact check everything. But it's sometimes great for brainstorming or whatever. So yeah. Barb says Barb says Barbara is a lazy sloth who has a hard time being serious and drives a VW Golf named Pugsley. I wasn't talking about you, Barb. I'm sorry, this is the first name that came to mind. So anyways, I'm going to take this question down now because I feel like we've thoroughly dug in on court cards, but hopefully that helps. And hopefully that gives you guys something to chew on and think about. Obviously we can go so much further. It's why things like Unlocking the Tarot are helpful, because you can read it, think about it, come back to it, journal about it, play with it. And by the way, something I do in Unlocking the Tarot, and I also do in all of my courses, is if I teach something, I always give a practical application. So after every section, at the end of every chapter, there will be spreads so that you can actually with specific prompts to help you dig into what it's like to read with just that section of the deck. So for example, we'll have a section on how to read with just the court cards, how to read with just the majors, minors, etc. And then you can kind of dig in. So for example, gosh, let me just tell you everything. But still by the book, okay? I'm such a nerd. I'm really proud of this. Okay, but anyways, so for example, in the court cards, I have one of the spreads I give you at the end is called the 1-card embodiment spread, right? This is simple. What qualities should I embody in the day or week ahead? And then you pull a court card for it. It's a great way to engage with the energy of the courts, right? You pull it into yours, how can I step into this energy this week? How can Alice, the Page of Swords, be my guide this week? How can I be more like Alice this week? Or in the case of Barbara, how can I be more like Barbara this week? And that's a great way to work with the court cards. But I also have a 2-card, 3-card, and 4-card spread in there as well for you to really experiment with and get to know the energies. So anyway, I'm all over the place. I know, I'm excited too. I'm such a nerd. Okay, I've got so many questions in my list, so we're going to start digging into those. Barb, does one of the cards depict a hot tattooed man? Because Barbara would go with that card first. Probably in the Rainbow Moon Tarot, we could find you one of those. It's very helpful. Writing personality profiles up about each of the court cards is a great way to get to know their energy, right? So yeah, if you don't know pop culture icons, that's a great alternative to do. Okay, so remember guys, if you want to add questions to the list, put question or the question emoji in your comment so that I can see it. Barbara has a lasso. It's hilarious. I love it. Okay. Next question. Oh, okay. So we did this one. Thank you so much, Tarot Trouble. If you've got a follow-up question though, let me know. We did totally address this. Next up, how can I read tarot for myself? It's a big topic, but let me see what I can do. So it depends on how you prefer to read tarot. And I think it's worth qualifying this a little bit. A lot of us read tarot multiple ways, and some of us only read tarot one of 2 ways. So let me tell you the 2 major ways. The 2 major ways are to dig into understanding, and I'll talk about what that is. And then the other way is more of a prophesying style, like reading the future, right? Trying to know what's coming next. And how you read for yourself will largely depend on which of those approaches you tend to lean into more. So for myself, I 99% of the time am reading into what can help me right now. What is an understanding? How can I dig deeper into a situation? How can I understand it? How can I get another perspective of it? And so I read for myself constantly. But the way that I read for myself, and we'll just continue to use, actually, I want another, do I have another? Yeah, I do. I have a shuffled copy of my, oh please, I want to work with my own deck. Okay. This is my very first test print I did of the Unicorn's Journey, so it's not as fancy, but whatever. This is the one I've been using like crazy, so it's all worn and beat up. Okay, so let's say I was doing a reading for myself, and I wanted more understanding. So let's say I'm in conflict with somebody, like I said. Let's say I just had a big fight with Peggy, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on with us right now? Let's say I want to read about that. So I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to think about that question, and then I'm going to pull cards. Okay, what the heck is going on right now with us? What the heck? I'm a little hormonal, so I've been a little bitchy the last couple of days, so I already know what's going on. But let me just pull this out. So I pull 3 cards. Oh boy, great. Okay, so I get Judgment, the 10 of Earth, and the Empress. Now, I tend to think of Judgment as an opportunity. We're being given an opportunity to do better, step up, to step into the next phase, to be more true to ourselves, or to be better. So we're being called to be better. And then the 10 of Earth to me is about gratitude, recognizing what you've built, the life that you've built. And then the Empress card to me is about nurturing self and others. So when I put all of these three on the table and I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, I'm being called to do better. So maybe I need to be aware that I've been bringing maybe a little bit of hormonal bitchiness to the table. And the 10 of Earth is like, maybe I haven't been feeling real grateful for the life we built together. Maybe I haven't been really honoring that as much as I could. And then now, mind you, the way that I read tarot for myself is usually calling myself out in some way. You don't have to do it that way. That's just how I tend to work with it. And then for nurturing, it's like, what can I nurture? I would use this as like an action step. Okay, knowing this, having identified the issue, what can I now nurture? What can I feed? What can I put more energy into? How can I better take loving care of this relationship and this marriage that's so important to me? So like, that's how I might go with it. That's like if you're reading the energy. Now, actually, let's just stick with the same cards. No. I want to do new cards. So I can just kind of shake the energy loose. Okay, so let's say instead, I'm reading more future-based. I might be like, well, I had a fight with Peggy. What's the long-term, like, I don't really read this way, but let's say this is what you did. You're like, okay, I want to know what's the future status of my relationship? What's the future status of my relationship? Strength, the Devil, and the Three of Earth. Okay, so I'm going to read this as future-based, right? So this is now a future-based question. I'm reading for myself in my situation. I'm going to be like, okay, strength to me is about, I go a little deeper. It's hard for me to take the like personal psycho-spiritual sort of dig out of it, but I'll just say strength for me often represents harmonizing challenging energies, could be toxic energies, can be really negative stuff or things that we perceive about ourselves that are negative, and learning to kind of befriend those things and make space for them to exist and still be worthy as parts of us, and to move forward with courage in spite of the fact that we know that we're flawed. I kind of see strength in that way, sort of embracing the parts of us, loving the parts of us that are harder to love. So in the future, what I see, if I'm looking at this future based about my relationship and I see strength, loving the parts of ourselves that are harder to love or of the other person. And then the Devil, which for me is very much about negative patterns we get stuck in, right? Could be addiction, can be toxic patterns, can be, inherited traumas and stuff that we bring. All of this, it's like, okay, I need to meet those things with courage and look straight at them. We're gonna in the future have to deal with these kinds of problems again and again and again. It's the nature of marriage. If you've been married, you're gonna keep having to face this stuff. So what's the answer? Well, it's the Three of Pentacles. When we face these problems in the future, we're really going to have to learn how to meet the problems head on as a team, work together, work collaboratively against the problem, not against each other. And so again, I've still somehow managed to make it present focused. I'm real bad at the future shit, you guys. I'm not. I need maybe a different sample question. But I hope that gives like an idea of reading for yourself. Let me try one more. Okay. I need a different question. Let's talk about what's the long-term potential of this job? This is maybe a better one. I need to get away from the relationship stuff because I keep making it too present focused. Okay. What's the long-term potential of this job that I'm at? All right. Four of Earth. So I'm just going to go one card just to keep it simple. Four of Earth, long-term potential. It's stable. But it is also going to be kind of restrictive. This is super true about my job right now. It's something that I'm very bonded to, that I'm attached to. I'm afraid to give it up. I'm afraid to risk it. I feel so called out again. See, I don't know how to do it any other way. But in the future, this is going to be how it's going to continue to be, is how I'd view this, barring any changes. But yeah, I do read week ahead, month ahead. It's just hard for me to put my brain in that place right this minute. Okay, let me try a week ahead. We're going to do a pretend week ahead for Joe. If there's a Joe in here, I'm sorry, it's not really for you. I just made up a person's name. Okay, so Joe wants to know what his week's looking like. We have the Four of Water, which to me is about sometimes a bit of apathy, a bit of stagnation. We have the Five of Air, which is often about somebody's acting not in alignment with right behavior, maybe ethically, maybe somebody's behaving a little unethically. And then we have the Magician, which for me is about power, potential, and recognition of that power and potential. So, and then what we can do with it. So week ahead, okay. So it looks like you're going to deal with some garbage. There's going to be some BS coming through, right? Somebody's going to behave badly. Is that you? Hopefully not. If it is you, you're going to have to check that. Because the magician, if the magician card gets into a more negative aspect, it can be intensely manipulative. So when we see the magician next to the 5 of air, I'm like, oh, you might be dealing with a little bit of manipulation. Somebody might be trying to like mess with you a little bit. You need to, especially because I'm reading this, looking at this character, Mystic, who is looking away from all of this BS. If it's other people's stuff, don't give it your time and attention. Don't let it disrupt your peace. You're good. You don't need this stuff getting in your way. So, yeah. Hopefully that is helpful as far as reading for yourself. Oh, I just read for somebody else, but that's how I read future. This totally sidetracked off the question, but like, this is how we roll. Perimenopause has got me same. Perimenopause has got me all snarly. Usually I have fun with it. I'm like, I literally joke about like just being really like ragey, and then we just end up laughing our way through it. And I'm just like, she just lets me just like be comical about it, and then it's great. So we do that a lot. Anyway, I know that's a point. Give you a sneak peek. This is how my brain works. Well, this kind of stuff is where this came from. So yeah. Okay. Let me go back to Joyful Dolphin. So sometimes when I read tarot that goes into like fantasy world, I don't know why, but it's like very interesting. I love it. Yeah, that makes total sense. I completely get what you mean. When you get into when you're able to go other places with it, for sure. Okay. I want to answer so many questions, so I'm going to have to like try to be more succinct, which is very challenging for myself. But anyways, I hope that helped, Mango Polo, with the idea of how to read for yourself. It's a bit, like I said, it's a big question, but we did answer this. How do you know if a court card is a person or an internal energy? Again, I'm just going to reiterate. The bottom line is you really just have to learn to practice and test. And if you start with the idea that it's an energy and then see if it feels intuitively true that that energy sounds like a person in this situation, then you can go down that. But I would say start with it being an energy and go from there. And that way you're free to interpret it how you want. Okay. Another big question. Julia, I wanted to ask your biggest tips for beginners, and more specifically, how would you recommend a beginner starts incorporating tarot into their day? I'm going to be controversial, and just so y'all, well, not controversial. My approach is maybe not as common, but I don't know. Maybe it is. Again, a couple things, obviously my own biases. I know I keep saying that, but what I would say, biggest tips for beginners in general, just start. Just start. I would say this if you wanted to start a YouTube channel, or if you want to learn how to cook, or you want to learn how to sew or crochet or anything, you have to just start. And I think for a lot of us, that's actually the biggest challenge, because we're like, well, I need to know how to do it right first. No, you don't. No, you don't. Just play. Just start. The reason that I am so passionate about the Tarot with Training Wheels course and why it's helpful is because it helps you to just start. If you have a deck of cards and on every card you have a keyword, you don't have to worry about knowing every single thing about what this card means. You start from that keyword and you let that keyword be a key that unlocks the meaning. That's the whole point of my book. Let the keyword be a thing that becomes a diving board, so you can dive into the deep end of the pool and swim around and see what that card means. For example, for the Hermit, I have introspection. So I've written the keyword on my card. That's what I'm passionate about. Write the keyword on your card. That's what I think. I mean, if you own the deck and you don't mind messing it up, whatever. Write the keyword on the card. So now when you pull this card, you don't have to think, what does a hermit mean again? You go, oh, it's introspection. Well, how does introspection apply to the situation? Okay, now I'm going to do a quick 3-card reading. No problem, right? I've got a court card. Of course I do. What is with judgment, dude? Stop stalking me. Okay, so we have justice, where I have accountability. Hermit, where I have introspection. And then I have Fluttershy, who, by the way, is My Little Pony and my favorite for the Page of Cups. Sensitivity to fragility is the range of personality. So I'm like, okay, wow. What does this have to tell me about my situation? Accountability and introspection. Oh, well, interesting. How does that come into it? And then how does sensitivity to fragility come into it? Am I being sensitive or fragile? Is the other person being sensitive or fragile? Is there nobody involved and we're just asking about like a job or something? Okay, well, maybe I need to be a little bit less scared or a little bit more willing to put my neck on the line to apply for jobs. Maybe I need to introspect about what it is I actually want to do. And maybe I need to be honest with myself about what kind of work I really am prepared to do or am skilled enough to do. So I've answered my question just by throwing cards on the table and reading the keywords and remembering that those are a springboard. So when you're thinking about beginner tip, it's like, get started. That's why I'm passionate about the keyword system, because it gets you started. You don't have to stop and like study. You don't have to learn every single thing to start. You just start. And as you start and as you practice, You build a relationship with your understanding of the cards, and that relationship will give you confidence to do more and to learn more. And some people stop here. Some people learn a keyword for the card. Eight of Wands is momentum, and they never read a book again after that. They like, okay, I know a keyword. I'm good. I'm good. And then some people like me are absolutely insatiable nerds and will not stop learning about the tarot forever. I've been studying the tarot for like 25, 26 years or something now, off and on, like different books, different decks. I learn through every new deck. I read different guidebooks, and I'm going to continue to learn about tarot forever because I love to learn about it. But that's not necessary. That's just because I'm a nerd and I like it. But like, you don't have to do that to read tarot effectively. You just need to have a basic understanding of each card, and then you just got to work with it. That's it. As far as incorporating it into your day goes, my favorite piece of advice is start by using tarot to reflect on your day. You've already had events that have happened. Pull a card at the end of the day. Pull 3 cards. And don't come at it with a question. Just be like, okay, I'm getting ready to go to bed. I'm going to pull 3 cards. Okay. There's a freaking judgment card again. Oh, God, enough with the court cards. Come on now. Give me something else. I think they were sorted because I was looking at them recently. Anyways, okay. So I've now got 3 cards on the table. I've already had my full day. I've gone to work, or I've had conversations with people. I've done whatever hobbies or interests or other things that I do. I've done my chores, hopefully, or whatever. Getting ready to go to sleep. I pull 3 cards from what my day was all about. I get the Knight of Pentacles, which in this case I call Frodo. And the Knight of Pentacles is dependable to inflexible. So I would ask myself, well, in what ways did I experience this energy today? Oh, well, gosh, Peggy was being super stubborn about blah, 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 blah. Oh, cool. I bet that probably is what that might be about. And then over here, judgment. Was there an invitation or a call? Maybe I actually got invited to a party. And I'm like, oh, whoa, that was the judgment card. I got invited to a party. I had an option. It could say yes or no. That's a really mundane way to look at that card. It's a calling or an invitation, right? There's also an evolution. How was I maybe invited to step up and be better today? Did I accept that call, or did I instead ignore it? How did I respond to it? Oh, interesting. 5 of Wands. How did competition play out in my day? Was I being a little bit like competitive about something? How did I do that? And now what's happened is you've been able to link the cards with what actually happened that day. So the next time maybe you pull these cards and you're like, how's my day going to go today? And you pull Frodo. Sorry, you pull the Knight of Pentacles, right? And you're like, well, it might be that I bump up against some stubbornness today. It might be mine, might be somebody else's. And you're going to start to build this relationship with the card and how it might link to everyday activities or everyday experiences. And now you're reading more predictably. And that's if you want to read more predictably. Let's say you don't want to read predictably, but now you've used this in card reflections at the end of the day. So now you're like, you've pulled this card. What do I need to think about today? What should I focus on? And you get Frodo and you're like, ooh, I should be mindful. I want to be present for people and I want to be available to them, but I don't want to get super stubborn. Like I want to show up and get what I need to get done, which is the Knight of Pentacles. Like he wants to get his work done, but I don't want to be stubborn. So if I've got a task list of 25 things to do today and Peggy wants to be flexible and go for a quick drive, I need to be a little flexible. I need to not be so stubborn about like, but I must get my thing done no matter what. So now I've got advice for my day. It's very present focused. It's not predictive. It's just like, hey, this is something I should keep in mind today. So hopefully that gives you an idea of all of that. I clearly am not going to be able to give an answer less than 10 minutes long to any question. So I apologize if I don't get to your question. Keep throwing them in there though. I'll keep adding them to the list. Somebody asked what deck this is. This is the Rainbow Moon Tarot. It's a mass market deck. I had a really hard time reading with this because it makes a lot of changes. The court cards are different. The suit names are different. So it was actually the perfect one to put my keywords on because like I was about to just let it go. But I really like having one with these are all the keywords from my book that are on this one. I had a different deck that had my original set of Tarot with Training Wheels keywords, but they've changed some since then. So this one has all that. You're welcome, Julia. I'm glad it was helpful. So yeah, keep throwing your questions in and we'll see how we scoot along here. Okay, next up I have Marcella. Love to know about how you choose an expansive keyword. I hesitate a lot to pick one. A lot of reflection, a lot of word nerding, and a lot of experimentation. My best advice for choosing a good keyword, and I hopefully do a good job of explaining this in the book, but my best advice is don't be afraid to change your mind. if you buy this book and you took my Tarot with Training Wheels course, you will see that even some of those keywords I have been using for years. And part of the exciting process of doing the Tarot with Training Wheels course was that I got a lot of feedback. And in some cases, some very, very detailed and very, very helpful feedback of how other people were receiving it and how they were conceptualizing the words I was presenting. And that called into question some of the words that could have been more clear or that could have been better. And so I dug into how could I pick a better word for this because it's kind of unclear. Good example is I think originally I had, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to remember? I had it's the 2 pages, the Page of Swords and the Page of Wands. Let me see if I can find them. And remember what my old, so I think I had inquisitiveness or curiosity for one and inquisitiveness or something for the other. They were really close. They were very, very similar words. And because of Tarot with Training Wheels and the feedback I got, I ended up changing them. Oh my gosh, am I not going to be able to find it? Okay, Page of Swords, inquisitive to intrusive. That's my Alice card. And then my Page of Wands. There she is. Enthusiastic to fanatical. So my Page of Swords is like Alice from Alice in Wonderland. My Page of Wands is like Anne from Anne of Green Gables. So Alice is curious, intensely curious, like kind of nosy, right? She wants to know everything and she cannot let it go. Like she can't let it go. She got to find the rabbit, right? Anne also sometimes can't let shit go, but she's enthusiastic. Everything is magical. Everything is wondrous, right? But my previous set of keywords didn't do a great job of differentiating these two energies. And so over time with feedback, I've eventually changed them. The cool thing is, tarot cards are typically inexpensive. I should say, let me correct that. Indie decks can be pricey. My indie deck is hella pricey. I'm just saying like some of them can be inexpensive. So if you get a deck that you're thinking of like letting go, like this was one I was thinking of letting go, write your keyword. Don't be afraid to literally scratch it out and write a new keyword. The thing about an expansive keyword is you're not going to know how expansive it is until you're using it. Once you're using it, you're going to be like, oh, wait, this doesn't feel clear. I need to like dig in more. Ooh, Barb asked an excellent question. BRB. Yes. I had to show it. Y'all, this is not a small book. But when I tell you, I probably read this entire thing cover to cover while working on unlocking the tarot, I'm not sure I'd be lying. Yes, dictionary and thesaurus are incredible. I liked having a paper copy handy. And if you've never used one, it's real simple. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I'll be able to zoom in. Let's zoom in. Oh, look at that. Okay, yeah. So let me find a good one. Okay, here's a good one. So here we have inventiveness, the quality or state of being. Now, I would actually recommend a dictionary thesaurus, not just a thesaurus, because you want something that's going to give you the definition of the word too. So inventiveness, the quality or state of being inventive. And then it suggests some other words: creativity, ingenuity, invention, or originality. Okay, interesting. I think originality is getting me a little closer. So now I'm going to go to originality. Let's see if I can find it. Because you would think, it would help if I know my alphabet. There it is. It's at the bottom. So now we have originality. And now it says freshness of aspect, design, or style, the power of independent thought or constructive imagination. And then we have some other words: freshness, newness, novelty, or creativity, ingenuity, invention, or inventiveness. So it does cross-link back to the first word. Or we could go into this novelty. Ooh, novelty might be a good word. And so basically you can continue to go back and forth trying to find my camera's skewed. Don't be skewed. Okay, I think it's good now. Yes, the sources are incredible. And there's online ones. Y'all don't have to get a paper copy like me. I'm a nerd, and I'm a word nerd especially. But I loved having this. I loved how it led me from one place to another place to another place. And I'm a word nerd, so I like having one of these. I really loved this Webster's one. I looked at a bunch of them, and this one was the best. I liked it because it's got those colors, so you can immediately see where the blue is for where the synonyms are, and it's really great. Antonyms are also helpful if you understand what a word means, and then you look at its opposite, right? So, anyways, I'm just babbles, but that was relevant. Okay, so next question. And I hope that helped on the how to choose an expensive keyword question. Joel asks, how to tackle tarot cards that almost depict the same image. Many times, oh, yes, I love this question. Okay, so this is why I have a deck in order. Many times I see the Lovers, the Two of Cups, the Ten of Cups, and the Four of Wands with almost an identical depiction. Thanks. So let's look at the Rider-Waite-Smith for this. Okay. This is where my deck will not stay in order, but we have the Lovers, the Four of Wands, the Two of Cups, and the Ten of Cups. Okay. There's the 10, and there's the 2. Okay. This is why I have a whole chapter on cards that are easily mixed up. And the Lovers and the Two of the Cups is one of the cards that I talk about, card combos I talk about. These are all very interesting, right? Because they all show us couples. There's a couple in the Lovers card. There's a couple in the Two of Cups. There's a couple plus kids in the 10 of Cups. And there's like what looks to be maybe like a marriage or something, like another couple in the Four of Wands. What gives? Right? What gives? So when you're talking about how to tackle the fact that they look the same, this is where having a unique keyword, I'm sorry to be such a broken record, is helpful because you can differentiate. And the keyword comes about through study and through reading and through like getting a basic understanding, at least of the cards. You can choose a keyword that works for you. But if I take this same one and I overlay what my keywords are, this is going to take a minute, but I'm going to grab them so you can see. So we want the 4, 2, 10, and Lovers. 4, 2, 10, and Lovers. 4, 2, 10, and Lovers. That's crystals. I should have put this one in order too now. Okay, so there's our 2. We have connection. That's my keyword. 4, 2, 10, and Lovers. Come on. Oh, I already got the 2, so now 4, 10, and Lovers. I can do it, I swear. There's the 4, and I have milestone. There's the 10, and I have bliss. Why am I not finding the Lovers? It's probably called something else in here. Da, 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 da. Yo, I know you're in here. Don't even. Okay, well, take my word for it. The Lovers is commitment for me. I don't know why I can't find her in here. Oh, there she is. Okay. Commitment. So now we have commitment versus connection versus bliss versus milestone. And now they seem much more different. The keyword helps a lot for differentiation, right? Because then we have a basic understanding that takes us outside of just the visual representation. So when you understand what each of these cards represents and how they're different from each other, now you have a totally different way to read them. For example, the Lovers isn't often about romantic love. It is sometimes, but it's about the choices we make that have irrevocable consequences, or I shouldn't say irrevocable, I should say long-term consequences. They're big commitments. This might be a work contract, right? It might be, just to give you another perspective, these are the questions I asked myself when wait, why am I not going through the one in order? Jeez, Lisa. Okay, hold on. For example, my Lovers card is called choice, to reflect the idea that there are 2 paths in front of you and you've got to pick one, and it's going to have a long-term effect. Okay. Similarly, if I go to the 4 of Wands, we have Mystic, who's my main character, practicing and working on something and having some small success. That's the 4 of Wands energy. We've reached a milestone. Maybe the milestone is you've built a house and you got married, but that's like a pretty antiquated milestone, right? That's not the only milestone of life. It's like you've gotten partway onto your journey. The 10 of Cups, on the other hand, is all about, for me, the kind of perfect moments. You're surrounded by loved ones or love in general. You feel fully complete and happy and content, and everything is glorious and it's good and everybody's in a good mood. And that doesn't last, but it's like great to enjoy when it happens, right? So bliss is my keyword for that. And then for the Two of Cups, we have this connection. We don't know where that connection is going to go, but we're experiencing a connection. Do you know what I mean? So there's all of these ways you start to develop a relationship because you understand what the card means, and you understand what the card means by really beginning to learn how to associate it with, I think, how to begin to associate it with a word. I think that that's really, really helpful. So hopefully that helps. Growth really feels right. Let's see for what. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about the Three of Swords. Oh, my coffee's dying. You know how I've been talking too long. My coffee mug is running out of battery. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Cherry Sprinkle asks, when you're reading, do you look at card by card how many elements on the table, or do you factor the suits into your reading? Do you add numerology? Yes, kind of. I'll answer how I read, and I'll use the Rainbow Moon for that so that I can put these back in a minute. Okay, so I do incorporate multiple layers of this, and I do talk about this actually in the book. When you're talking about, this is part of my 5-step method for how to read cards in combination. But I get into this in way more detail in my intuitive tarot reading method. But anyway, we have a grouping of cards on the table. Let's shuffle them. Maybe I won't get judgment again this time. Like, I hear you. I hear you. Okay. So we got a grouping of cards. Okay. So we've got all the crystals. Let's just take 3. Nah, let's take 6. It's easier if I have more. Let me scooch my other stuff up a bit. Okay, so I've got 3 cards there. Scooch my shit out of the way here. What is happening? Why are we crooked? Oh, well, okay. And then I've got 3 more cards. Oh, you're not going to be able to see them. There we go. My stuff is still in the way. That's fine. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So this is interesting. Is that judgment again? Y'all. Guess who's going to be journaling about judgment later? This girl. Anyways, so, God, that's funny. Anyway, so my first step when I'm reading is typically to take a quick look at the balance on the table. What is on the table? Is there a lot of something, nothing of something else? And I do that in both numbers and elements, but the first place I start is elements. So we have earth cards or crystals. So we have 2 earth cards. Daggers are air. We have 3 air cards, and we have judgment. There's no earth and there's no water. There's no earth and there's no water. So I look at what's absent and what does that tell me about the situation? Why is this so focused on earth and air? Okay, so for me, earth is very much about resources and material security, and air is about intellect and thought processes and mental processing. And water is about emotion, and fire is about passion and purpose and all that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, well, passion and purpose and emotion aren't really a part of this reading. This is about thought. It's about material security. It's about my relationship with those things. Then I might look at numbers, and I only look at numbers if I see something repeating. For example, we have 2 9s on the table. Now, 9 is a number for me that is kind of like that perfect endpoint in a way. It's like a fulfillment in a way. It's not the end. I don't know, fulfillment. What is the word I use? Hold on. I'm going to literally refer to my own book because, again, memory of a goldfish. But I know how I conceptualize it. I'm just trying to remember what word I assigned to it in here. So we're going to get into the numbered minor arcana. Talk about numbers at the beginning to that. And for me, I chose for my main number keyword, fulfillment. I was right. I was doubting myself, but no, I was right. Fulfillment is my word. Whereas 10s for me about realization, they're the final. Now, realization being both the idea of a realization that you have in your mind, like I've realized something because I've gone through this whole journey and I've learned something, versus the other way to look at realization, which is to have realized something. Like I want to start a business and I've realized that dream. Do you know what I mean? It's completion of a sort. Anyway, so when I see 9s on the table, I think about how we're reaching a point of fulfillment overall in the reading and how it represents that. That makes sense? So I would pull that in. And also the major arcanas can be distilled into numerology as well. So the judgment is 20. I'm not going to do much with that because it doesn't correspond with anything on the table. But let's say I had a lot of 10 or 2 energy. I might sort of pull that in a way, depending on how I want to look at that number. But I hope that answers your question of how I incorporate those things. Numerologically, generally, I will also look at, do I have any examples? Yeah. So let's say I pulled a reading like this with that freaking judgment card. Okay, so I have the 8 of daggers followed by the 9 of daggers and then judgment. I'm gonna notice that we went from an 8 to a 9 because that shows a progression. And I'm also gonna notice if it's the other way around. We go from a 9 to an 8. So numerology comes in that way. And the other thing that might come in is I pull a single card and it's just the 8. I am aware that the 7 of daggers came before this moment in time and the 9 of daggers is coming out after this moment in time. And sometimes that plays into the reading. But again, these are layers of complexity that I would not advise adding until you're really comfortable with just reading what's on the table as it is and not adding all these other like big pieces. I would say add them as you're comfortable. In fact, even when I talk about the 5-step method of how to read cards in combination, I'm very clear to say this system works if you just add one of these 5 steps. Then when you get comfortable with that, add step 2. Then when you get comfortable with that, add step 3. And these give you other layers to work with and they help you understand the harmony between the cards. But if you try to come out the gate doing all these things all at once, you're going to stress yourself out and get mad and throw the cards across the room. I'm not speaking from personal experience or anything, I swear, for a friend. So yeah. Ooh, this is a great response to the 3 of Swords. So let's segue that. Let's go into the 3 of Swords question. Pop it up on the screen. So Tanya Ramble said, what alternatives are there to betrayal or heartbreak for this? It's been coming up pretty frequently, or would I just need to pull clarification cards? So here's my thing about the 3 of Swords. I'm going to pull my own because I just want to. My thing about the 3 of Swords is that there's a reason why it involves the heart, but it's not the reason. Again, this is just me preaching about my own personal take on it, my own personal belief. The reason I think that the heart matters in this card is because our thoughts are not always clear and good and easy. Sometimes our thoughts are painful, or sometimes we're thinking about painful experiences. When you pull the numerology in, and I think somebody mentioned this in chat, I saw it scroll by when I was babbling about the last question, but the number 3 is all about growth and expansion. We're adding something. Well, how the hell do you reconcile that with the 3 of Swords? I tell you how. Name a painful experience you've ever had in your life. Heartbreak, emotional trauma, breakups that you have not learned or grown or expanded after or from. Name one. Maybe don't name one because that's really private, but I'm just saying, like, think of one. Can you think of a single time you had a painful emotional experience in your life that you have not learned or grown from? That's what the 3 of Swords is. The key word I use for this card is reckoning. We're reckoning with something. We are processing a painful moment, a painful realization, a painful experience. Maybe we did just have a heartbreak or a breakup, but it's not about the heartbreak itself, but how we're processing, learning, and growing from that heartbreak. What are we taking from that? Are we wallowing in the pain of it, or are we actually learning and growing and empowering ourselves through this experience? And that sounds shitty because there's some experiences that are just crap, but there's always something we do to grow, learn, or strengthen after that. Pain brings, yes, Sarah, pain does bring growth as much as we hate it. Yeah, I'm not saying that everything happens for a reason at all. I think that's a gross thing to say. I'm saying that when bad things happen, we can still be empowered after that. We can still take something and grow and be stronger after that. So the 3 is a point of growth. It's a point of expansion. It's a point of learning. And so it's mental learning or growth. That's what the card means, as a result of an emotional or painfully heartfelt experience. Make pain into power. Yes, Joyful Dolphin. So when we're talking about how to reconcile this card, to me, it's so simple, because the debate of this card is, well, heartbreak doesn't belong in the sword suit. The sword suit is all about the mind. But the mind is painful sometimes. It's a painful place to be. And sometimes we're processing painful experiences. So the heart and the mind are inexorably linked. They are always intertwined to some degree. We don't think absent of emotion. Emotion is in everything we think. Even when we try real hard in meditation or through whatever practices we have to be as equanimous, I can't say the word. We want to be like level-headed. We don't want to let our emotions influence our thinking. There is no way to separate the two. And I think the Three of Swords acknowledges that intertwining and the ways in which those two play together. So anyways, I'm clearly very passionate about that, but I hope that helped. And people do have strong feelings about this card. And it's why, in fact, this card I think is, what am I trying to say? When I look at a new tarot book, I almost always go right to the Three of Swords to see what the creator or the author wrote about it, because that tells me a lot about how they conceptualize the tarot or of their understanding of the tarot, not in a judgy way, but in like a, do I understand and can I relate to their perspective? Does it make sense with my understanding of the card? Which is a useful thing to do when you get a new deck anyways, in my opinion, is just see how you do or don't harmonize. It's what we do in our deck studies in the membership. How we do or don't harmonize with those meanings. How does this conflict with or challenge my understanding of this card, which can be good because that can be good for growth and expanding your knowledge? Or how does this harmonize or agree with my already belief or interpretation of this card? It's a great way to grow and learn about the tarot. But yeah, I'm trying to put my deck kind of back together so that I have it for the next question if we want to pull cards. And I did it. Okay, so Rider-Waite-Smith is back in order. Yay. So hopefully that was helpful on the Three of Swords. But yeah, I think it's a great discussion point, and I think we should continue to challenge always what the cards, what we're told they mean or what we think they're supposed to mean. It's really great to challenge that understanding at every turn. I think it's really great for growth in general in the practice. Corey asks, how do I read a negative card that is pulled for a positive position, i.e. the Ten of Swords for the blessing position? This is a great question. You know why? Because I don't believe, well, I shouldn't say that that's true. There's a few places where I'm going to like legitimately contradict where I wrote my book. Okay, so I'll say this. There are a few cards that I think are always challenging no matter the circumstance, but they are the exception. And I think this card is actually not one of those exceptions. And I'm going to tell you why with my own Ten of Swords. I think that the reason it's so important to choose a keyword that can encapsulate the meaning of the card and how it can be viewed as a blessing or an obstacle. I think the reason that that's important is because of the fact that we often have these preconceived ideas that this card is always negative or always positive. The Tower is a great example, but the Tower can be both a blessing and an obstacle. And same with the Ten of Swords. I'm going to pull my keyword card just for, I really should have put this in order. But then again, it was good to have a shuffled deck that we could use for stuff too. So mind you, I have my shuffled. You know what? It doesn't matter. Next time I'll try to remember to put this one in order, and then I'll have a different shuffled deck to use. I may not have the attention span to spot the card. I just realized I was like half checked out because I'm thinking while I'm looking. I have so many things to say about this. Yeah, I'm going to pull that just as an example. Okay. There it is. Finality. Something's ended. Is that terrible? Probably. Usually endings suck to some degree or another. Finality. I picked finality instead of something like, I don't know, devastation, because something ends and it's probably shitty. But that doesn't mean that it is not just like the Tower, which is destruction, clearing the way for something new, a new understanding, a new bit of growth. There's always, so let's say, let me get back to your questions. How do you read the negative card that is pulled for a positive card position? So now you're doing a spread. You've pulled the Ten of Swords in the blessing card, right? So I worked really hard in this specific Ten of Swords to tell a story about both sides of the card. So let me tell you a little bit about it if you're not familiar with this deck. So in this deck, this character Mystic had been away from their home, and their family members, including this little wolf, were there left alone in it. And Mystic wasn't there to protect them. While Mystic was away, bad guys came in and destroyed their home, hurt their very best friend, and all of this bad stuff is happening. But in the distance, there's multiple things happening throughout this story, but I'll hit on a couple of them. In the background, these other two winged unicorns are carrying Mystic's other family members on their backs and are bringing them back. They were safe. They were protected. In the front, even though Mystic's necklace here is smashed, these little air sylphs have been reunited with a lost loved one that Mystic brought back to them. And the wolf, who is, yes, gravely injured, Mystic has the ability to heal them. And the forest, this lilac grove that's been decimated, can regrow. So I hope some of that gives you an idea. that in spite of all of these things that have gone wrong, there's also other things that are still okay, that are still safe, that are still good, or that can be rebuilt. And so when you pull this in a blessing, my suggestion, when you pull a difficult card in a blessing position, my question to you is, how does the difficulty of that situation bring clarity to what is still good, what can be built on, what can be rebuilt, what can be restored, what can be healed? Because there are opportunities. Some of our biggest blessings come in crappy forms, right? Getting laid off is how I finally took the plunge to open my yoga studio. Getting laid off was a 10 of swords moment for me. I was the primary breadwinner at the time. It was my income we relied on. Holy shit, that's scary. That's horrible. And yet, it ended up being the opportunity I needed to clear the way and build something new. Much like the tower's destruction can bring us to that. And I had actually pulled the tower the day I got laid off, which is why it sticks with me as an example. We don't often see these difficult cards as blessings, but when you look for the blessing in it, which again, we're not talking about ignoring or nice washing the difficulty or the challenge. We're looking for, how does this difficult situation open a door for me? How does it create an opportunity? How does it allow for growth, healing, new understandings that can take me in a new direction? How do they help clear away what is no longer right for me? How does it do all of those things? And then you can go from there. Yay. Okay. I'm so glad that was helpful, Corey. That's great. So put this back. 10 of swords. 10. Okay. And yes, I'm loving, by the way, all the additional input in chat. So if you have feelings on the answers to these questions, please do contribute. I am not the only voice in the room that knows shit about tarot. Please speak up, obviously. I'd really love to see that. Yeah, it's a bit like the death and rebirth card. There's always a positive spin, even when it's hard to see. Yeah, I don't like to think of it as positive covering up the negative. I like to think of it as the positive, sometimes in spite of the negative, and sometimes because of the negative. And being able to look at these dichotomies, looking at the dichotomies and understanding how both can inform your situation. Okay, next up. How did I learn tarot? How and where did I begin? I don't know if you're still here, Emily, but I'll try to keep this fairly brief. My story, which I do tell actually in the intro, I think you guys will enjoy it. But my story about finding tarot really comes down to, I was hanging with a lot of people, friends at the time, who were really into divination and witchy stuff. And like, I was like this little baby witch trying to figure stuff out. And in my mind, the people that did, oh, you're still here. Great. In my mind at that time, the people who worked with tarot cards or runes or poems or any of that kind of stuff, tea leaves, they were all special. They were born with some kind of gift and they could just do it. And they were magical and it was amazing. And sometimes I miss that perspective because it was such a cool thing to experience and to see it in that magical way. But I was like, I'm not that person. It's like people who know algebra and shit. Like I'm not them. They're different. You know, they're born different. But I had my first ever tarot reading and I was just wowed and I was just like awestruck. But then later, because I'm hanging out with a whole bunch, all these people are reading cards. Like, what the heck? I decided to buy one. And in my mind, it's the first one. It may not have been. I may have forgotten the first one because I got it and it was Greek to me, so I got rid of it. Don't know. But it was definitely not a Rider-Waite-Smith. My first deck was the Osho Zen Tarot. And that is what actually kickstarted my love of keywords. Because if you know the Osho Zen Tarot, you know that instead of Page of Swords or 10 of Cups, it's just got a keyword. It's just got a keyword. And the picture really in a dramatic way illustrates that word. So I thought it was almost like learning an oracle deck, I guess you could say. I got to know that deck, and I got to know the deck by the energy of the card, by the keyword, and by the art. And those stories, the allegories and the images on those cards are forever embedded in my brain, much like I'm sure how now the Rider-Waite-Smith is embedded in my brain. And for a lot of people who learn on the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's embedded in their brain. But I learned tarot by learning first how to understand the card through a single keyword. So fast forward 25 years and now my book makes perfect sense, right? Like that's where it all came from. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because without that, I don't think I ever would have learned. If somebody would have put a Rider-Waite-Smith deck in my hands and said, now learn the tarot, I'd have been like, not happening. Not happening. These images do not speak to me. They do now only because of all of the study and all of the other decks I've worked with. But this one, This was not inspiring to me. This was not exciting to me. This was boring, not appealing visually. I was not excited about this, which is why I always say, if you want to learn the tarot, don't feel like this is the first deck you have to get. I still agree with everybody who says it's beneficial to learn the Rider-Waite-Smith. It absolutely is. But if it's Greek to you, if it doesn't make sense to you, if it's boring to you, you're not going to learn on this deck. You're not going to, because you're going to be so annoyed. It's like how they say, like I said, some people are really great with algebra and some people are really great with geometry. Some people are more artistic. Some people are more logical. Some people are visual learners and some people are audio learners. And so like, you really need to meet yourself where you are when you're trying to learn anything new. Blah. More soapboxing from Lisa. But that's what I should rename this series. Lisa climbs on her tarot soapbox and babbles about all of her opinions. That's kind of what this is. So yeah, use discernment. Obviously, my take is not the only take, but that was my story, roughly summarized. Okay. Do I tell people the bad news the cards may be saying? Yes. Responsibly. I think I have a lot of feelings about this, and I'm going to, again, try to be succinct and try to be clear. A lot of the answer to this question on a case-by-case basis is going to depend on how you interact with the cards yourself. And again, see my previous babble about how it's different to read the cards in a processing the present, learning in the present, and being your best self. Like that's kind of the more psycho-spiritual, I'd say, way to approach the cards. Or if you're reading it as telling you what's going to happen. But here's the thing. You really have to weigh all of this out with your own personal understanding, your beliefs. And also you need, I think, I'm going to say you need to a lot, but it's not me telling you what to do. It's literally me saying like, this is where how I approach it and what my feelings are. It's not me saying this is what you must do, just in case I word it that way. I feel like it's important to understand that when somebody comes to you for a tarot reading, they're putting a lot of faith and trust in you. And if that person leaves your table feeling disempowered, in my opinion, you've done wrong by them. You've done wrong by them. And I don't care what the cards say. And I will say that over and over again until I take my last breath. I think it's very, very, very important because I have seen so many clients or heard from so many clients who have been given a really disempowering message. And it's not a kindness. It is not helpful. Now, that is my view and my take, and I feel very strongly about it. That might not be yours. And if you really think that when you pull the death card, it means something's dying or a relationship is ending, and that's the message you need to give your querent, my advice to you is this. If that's strongly how you feel and you feel like that's what the cards are saying, yes, I think it's important to be honest with your client. But I think then you need to take it a little further and give them something that empowers them with that message. Like it or not, I think that's your responsibility. If you're going to pull, okay, well, you've just asked me about your relationship, and I've pulled, and I've had this happen, I've pulled the death card. I don't know why I need to have it on the table. I don't. We're just going to, whatever. I'm going to stop fussing. You've pulled the death card. We all know the death card, whatever. And in your mind, in your gut, in your intuition, you're like, shit, this relationship is going to end. I'm not going to say to my client, well, your relationship is ending. So like maybe pack your bags and do whatever. What I would say is, it looks to me like there's a lot of stuff that's not being addressed in your relationship. And it looks like it's on a trajectory or on a path toward having a real severing happen. This is not set in stone because, again, this is my view of predictive reading. The future is never set in stone because every single change alters the future. Like that's what free will is about, in my view. So again, you have to weigh this against how you view the cards. But I would say something like, okay, this doesn't look great. Looks like you guys are kind of on a train that's like crashing into a wall. Like we got to do something about this. So I would be talking mostly in that reading about, well, you're kind of not on a great path right now. So here's what we need to look at, right? And then I might pull additional cards if I need to. Like if that's the only card or that's the last card, I might pull additional cards. And be like, okay, we know that this is the path you're headed down now. What do we do about it? What do we need to change? What needs to be addressed? Maybe that person just needs to focus on themselves and keep themselves safe in that situation. Maybe they need to put more energy into speaking up about their needs. And then based on how that other person responds, will change how things go. Maybe they're the ones driving it into a wall, in which case it's like, maybe you need to look at what you're contributing. What are you bringing to this relationship that's got it on this course? So what I'm trying to say is that my goal, no matter what the message on the table is in the end, my client is empowered to understand that regardless of where things are heading, they have a choice to take it in a different direction. And I'm going to try to give them some concrete answers using the cards to help them go in the direction that is best for them. So if I pull a bunch of cards and I'm like pretty sure that these cards are saying this dude is no good, I've looked a client in the eyes and said, you already know this guy's no good for you. You already know it. What are you going to do about it? And then we talk about it and then we pull more cards, you know? So I have had to deliver some really difficult stuff, but 9 times out of 10, difficult messages that show up on the cards, your client already knows. Your client already knows. If their relationship is on the cusp of a divorce or a breakup, they know that already. That's why they're sitting in front of you. So are you going to just tell them what they already know, or are you going to empower them in some way? Are you going to help them navigate that? Are you going to help them course correct? Or if course correcting is not what's in their best interest, are you going to help them by talking about how to keep themselves safe? I've had a client come to me who was disentangling from a physically abusive relationship. And you know what we spent most of the time talking about? Resources. Here's what you need to do to look after yourself. You need to reach, I'm not going to be able to help you with this. Your first priority is to your safety. So here's what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Reach out to people who can help you with the safety piece. The rest of it can wait. And sometimes you get messages and you're like, you get alarmed. You're like, oh my gosh, this person's like really not, or maybe they're sitting across from the table and before you even pull cards, you know that something's not right. I have turned away clients and instead given them a link or a list of phone numbers to call for crisis lines. I think it's really important as a tarot reader to know what you are equipped to do and what you aren't equipped to do. And again, I'm soapboxing again, but this is just my vibe. I think that I never want to give a client a message that could put them in danger mentally or emotionally or physically, obviously. So that's my first priority always. And then secondly is to understand that I'm just reading the cards. Like if this is a health issue, that person should be seeing a doctor and I can help them in the energy. I can help them in the, how do they support themselves through this experience? Sure, we can do that together. But I'm not going to be like, here's how you fix your health or here's how you fix your financial crisis, because that's also something I'm not equipped or qualified to do. Here's how you fix your legal situation. I'm not qualified. So anyways, I've sidetracked a bazillion ways, but hopefully that gives some thoughts and some ways to kind of approach this, I guess. But I think my first and primary and only goal is to empower my client in some way, even when the news is hard or even when the topic is difficult. I want to empower them. So yes, I will always be honest, but I will always make sure it's given in an empowering way. Anyways, that was a lot. Yes, Michelle said, I love the empowering, disempowering distinction as opposed to good and bad. Yeah, this is really important to me in an ethical sense as a reader. And also because we never really know. I mean, no matter how much you believe in the woo side of tarot, are we willing? And the example I like to give is this. If somebody comes to me and says, I've got a really important test tomorrow, I need to know if I'm going to pass it or not. And I say, yeah, you're going to pass it. And then that person goes home and doesn't study. I'm now going to feel responsible because that person didn't study and I didn't tell them. I told them they were going to ace it. No problem. You got it. So in that kind of a question, I say, okay, are you going to pass it? Are you going to ace your test? And I get, heck, let's say I get the Sun card, you know, or the World card, but let's say the Sun. The Sun is like, it's pretty hard to put a negative spin on the Sun, right? It's pretty positive. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, gosh, it really looks like you're in good shape. It looks like you've probably done a lot of prep work. Don't get complacent and assume that means an automatic win. Instead, make sure you don't slack at the last minute, because obviously you're already on the right track. So how can you continue to stay on the right track so that you're lined up to do well tomorrow? That's the difference between just giving them the news. Okay, yeah, it looks like you're going to pass it, and empowering them in their best interest, you know? So yeah, again, I have so many opinions. But yeah. Okay. I love the death card question. Okay. So, next up on the list, we have April. April, are you still here? I answered that one already, actually. Okay. Loana, how do you choose which spread to use? Is there a relationship between the question and the spread? I mean, are there some spreads more suited for a specific reading? I feel like I'm answering all the questions just my own way, like a little rebel, but like, I mean, I blame hormones, I'm sorry, but like, I feel really contentious about this question. So I'll just answer it my way and like, do with it what you want. I think the best thing you can do for yourself as a reader is to know or learn or practice how to read the cards without a spread. Then I think it's really, really helpful or beneficial to learn 2 simple spreads. For example, my top 2, if I was going to say have 2 spreads, these are the 2. These are the 2. Energy obstacle advice. It's one that I came up with. Energy obstacle advice. Simple. You can do it for the present, the past, the future. You can do it to unpack anything. What is the energy of this situation? Oh, it's the Ace of Air. We need to bring a sense of being willing to uncover, to dig a little deeper. Like, what is that? There's like some kind of truth or clarity or message for us if we just look for it. Okay, cool. What's the obstacle? 9 of Earth. Now I already know this card. I need to look at it through the more negative lens because it's in the obstacle position. How can the 9 of Earth, which is all about being able to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor, being willing to like actually relax and enjoy life, treat yourself, right? How is that an obstacle? So I ask myself that question in my mind, and then I say what it means. So, okay, as an obstacle, the 9 of Earth is telling you that if you just assume that your work is done here and you can just rest and just chill, then maybe opportunity is going to pass you by. Okay, so what's the advice? Death. Be willing to let something go. Maybe it's your preconceived idea of how this is all going to play out. Maybe it's maybe you're clinging to a particular method and you need to just stop clinging so tight, let go, right? So that might be how I do that. But you can do energy obstacle advice for anything. And then the other reading that I actually recommend, and beginners are terrified of this, but let me tell you, it is so easy. I have it in my book. I have a whole video breaking it down, the Celtic cross. And I know y'all don't want to hear that. Listen, I know it's out of date. I know it's old fashioned. It's so freaking good. But if it's not the Celtic cross for you, pick another comprehensive spread that digs into so many different things. The reason I like the Celtic cross is because you get what's the center of the issue, what's affecting that issue, good or bad, what's lying beneath that issue, what's in the unconscious, what's lying above that issue, what's the conscious thing, what is it you're aware of, what's in the recent past about this situation, what's in the near future about this situation, how are you impacting the situation, how is somebody or something from outside of you impacting the situation, what's your greatest hope and greatest fear about the situation, and what is the key to the outcome. That's why I love the Celtic cross. And once you know it, and you know two good spreads, one small one and one big one by heart, you can whip it out in any situation. And when I was doing tarot and tea events, or which I would do through my yoga studio or other people's yoga studios, or just out and about on, at festivals, whatever. When I've done tarot and tea events where I'm doing like $10 a reading, sit down for 10 minutes, and then I kick you out and I do the next guy, I was doing full Celtic cross because I knew the spread so well, and it gave me so much information in such a short amount of time that I could just whip it out. So I would say there is a relationship. Using specific spreads is helpful, but it can bog you down because then you've added, okay, so you have, like I said, you have 3 cards. Well, I can look at these 3 cards and do a reading on these based on what they mean. I just add the meaning of this to the meaning of this to the meaning of this and come up with a meaning, right? What is it saying? That's what reading in combination is kind of all about. Now, if I'm reading with a spread, energy obstacle advice, I'm doing one of 2 things. I'm either simplifying this because now I've got, okay, this is the energy, this is the obstacle, this is the advice, which is helpful. For some of us, this actually adds a whole nother layer. Okay, well, instead of just thinking about what the 9 of Earth means, now I have to think about what it means as an energy. So I'm thinking of 2 things. I'm adding energy plus this card to get a meaning, obstacle plus this card to get a meaning, advice plus this card to get a meaning. You're looking at 6 qualities in pairs. And that can actually make it seem harder for some. So for some people, reading without a spread is much more freeing. And for some people, reading with spreads simplifies, right? It just depends. It just depends. But I would say specific readings are fun. It's fun to come up with a spread and then use it for a specific purpose, in which case 99% of the time I create my own. But you might encounter one that's really good from somebody else. And you might be like, oh, wow, that's a really good spread. And I think that would help me. This format you guys are seeing where I'm up here in the corner and then my table is like over here. This is what we use in my membership, where we're doing a series called Let's Play, where once a month we all get together and we organically work on something. So this last month, actually, it was just a few days ago, we did dream interpretation with tarot. I didn't come to teach dream interpretation. I came to say, let's figure out how we can use cards to interpret a dream. And organically throughout that stream, we came up with a spread. But we came up with the spread based on what we were trying to accomplish. And then we gave it a framework, and that was really beneficial to us. And we were able to experiment and interpret a few dreams as samples, and it ended up being intensely powerful. And I shared that spread in my Supportive Tarot Facebook group. I've got to remember to also share it here on the YouTube community tab so y'all who aren't on Facebook can see it, but it ended up being a really powerful spread. And so, yeah, spreads can be super beneficial and they can help you, but don't let them be the only way you have to read tarot, would be my advice. But if they give you freedom and they help you read, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Oh, that last sip was super cold. Okay, yes, and I love all the other advice coming through. Okay, oops. Next up, Tatiana, how do you reconnect with some tarot decks you just don't feel like using again? Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just say, bye-bye. I don't try too hard unless there's a reason I want to try harder. Like if something were to happen, heaven forbid, and I was suddenly not drawn to Unicorn's Journey Tarot, I'd be like, oh my God, that's not okay. I need to figure that out. But then again, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would just let it go. I can't imagine that being the case. It's like my soul in cards. But there's a whole bunch of ways you can bond with the deck. I would say flip however you've been using it on its head. So for example, let's say you got in a deck and right as soon as you pulled it out of the box, you were getting these great readings with it. And you would just, I have decks like this. You'll get them in and you're just like, oh yeah, it works right away. This is amazing. I don't have to think about it. It's perfect. And then sometimes you get in a deck and it doesn't make any sense to you until you study it, read the book, really bond with it, get to know it, journal about it. So what I would say is if you're having trouble getting like really relating to a deck, swap it. So if that was a deck that worked great for you out of the box and you've never sat down and really read the guidebook and studied it or journaled about the deck or really explored it in detail, spent quality time with it, then do that. If that was a deck that you studied and spent quality time with but just isn't speaking to you anymore, try to just whip it out for like a random reading and see how it feels without worrying about the guidebook or the meanings. If you normally read it according to what the book says the cards mean, try reading it intuitively. And then the last thing I would suggest is when I'm not sure, but I really want to give it a try, I challenge myself to use only that deck for a period of time, usually about a month, sometimes 2 months, depending on how much you're using the cards. And then at the end of that period, I'll know, is this a problem of me just like not feeling it right now? Or is this an issue of this deck just not working for me anymore? And I would say that some decks are lifetime decks, like they're going to just work forever for you. And some decks are a seasonal deck. They work for you during a season in your life. Like maybe I had a deck that was amazing when I was going through grief. And when I was through that period and things were normalized again for me, I actually actively disliked that deck. I didn't need it anymore. It was there to carry me through that period of time. And then once that period of time was over, I didn't need it anymore. It wasn't for me anymore. And sometimes, and that's actually more specifically too, that was like a season of grief, but it was also a reason. Sometimes a deck comes into your life or you purchase a deck because you're really trying to understand or get to know a particular thing, or you're trying to work with a particular energy, or you're trying to navigate a particular situation. And that's a reason deck. So there's reason, season, and lifetime decks in my view. And so reason and season decks, they're not meant to stay with me forever, you know, or maybe they're only meant to come out periodically for specific things. I've got a deck, the Kimberly San, Align Heart Affirmations Oracle. I call it my Linus blanket deck. I talk about it all the time. It's affirmations, but it's affirmations that are really validating and acknowledge pain and difficulty. That deck is amazing when I'm struggling. If I'm in anxiety, if I'm in fear, if I'm feeling like everything in the world is broken, if I'm feeling broken, I can pick up that deck and it will help me. It will hold my hand through that process. That's a reason or a deck. I need it for that particular reason, but the rest of the time it sits on my shelf and that's perfectly okay. So yeah, basically that's it. Okay. Hopefully that helped. And then Barb asks, oh, that was the thesaurus question. I answered that. And then Selenite Seer asks, what is the best way to approach the death card when it actually means death? I've had that happen in the past and it was a hard card to see for a while after that. I think it's so interesting. This comes up for death, but it doesn't come up as much for other cards that do the exact same thing. A lot of this depends on how you're approaching the question. If it's for reading for other people or reading for yourself. I have had it happen when I was reading for somebody else who I knew. It was in a tarot and tea, actually public setting. So it was a setting where I was reading and there was like a whole bunch of people milling about, but we were off in this little quiet corner and I was reading for this woman who I cared about, but who was a student of mine. And the card came out and unfortunately, and it was her and her husband sitting in front of me. And I was reading for her and she'd wanted him there. And she'd asked a question about just navigating some difficult things in her life. It was a very generically worded question. And when I pulled the cards, I pulled the death card and in my gut, like a punch, I knew that that card was saying, this is the path she's on. Like she's moving towards end of life stuff. And I never said that out loud to her. I struggled with it because it was the first time it had happened to me. And I think the way I handled it, I would probably handle it again in the future. Because again, I always come back to that empowering, disempowering message. Again, this is when I'm reading for somebody else. I'll talk about when you're reading for yourself in a minute. So when I was reading for her, I really dug into the surrounding cards and what her and her husband needed in that moment. I said something along the lines of, things are really difficult right now. And I wish I could tell you that they're going to just immediately get better, but I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that here's what you can hold on to, and here's how you can, where you can focus to ease your way along this path right now. Like, here's how you can support yourself. Here's how you can advocate for what is going to make you feel seen, held, validated. And because her husband was sitting right there, I spoke a lot to, like, it's okay to say you're having a rough day. It's okay to speak up when you need support. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to seek more opinions or more answers. If you're going through something where maybe you've gotten some advice, because in my head, I'm thinking, what if she got medical advice? And I didn't say that out loud because, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to tell her what to do medically, but I did say, let's say you've gotten some advice and some part of you is like, that can't be the only answer. Then go seek another opinion, go seek more advice, get it from a different somebody, right? And I was very cautious about how I spoke, but I spoke honestly without using words like death and without using words about like illness, but instead being about the energy of the situation. How could she support herself, and what would empower her or make her feel that she had things she could do to navigate the situation? Because it didn't feel like it was imminent, right? And it wasn't the kind of thing where it was very clear by how she'd asked her question in hindsight that she was asking about her health. She just didn't use any of that language. And I could see it all over her face as well. And so I talked about it. I said, things are difficult and they're also scary. And sometimes, don't forget, sometimes death shows up because of fear of death. And so I always address that piece as well. If it comes up, I'll say, obviously when we see cards like this on the table, we get really freaked out. But let me tell you that regardless of fear, here's how we can empower ourselves through the scenario, through the situation. I hope I'm expressing this right, but it's something you want to speak and think slowly through. You want to work slowly through. But let's say you're reading for yourself, because I know people that this has happened to too. You're doing your week ahead reading and you pull the death card. And that week, somebody you love or a beloved pet passes away unexpectedly. You're going to be devastated. And you're also going to be real freaking mad at the cards. And that's valid. That's valid. And that may change how you choose to work with the cards in the future. You may go, you know what? I don't want to have that experience again. So I'm going to keep my readings grounded in the present and the past. And that's a valid choice to make. Valid. But I think we can logically understand that the death card is about the experience of what death represents. And on rare occasion, it can represent actual death. I don't want to say that it never does, because that'd be a lie. We experience deaths all the time in our life, whether it's actual physical death of somebody or something near to us, or whether that's the death of a relationship, or the death of a friendship, or the death of a job. These are all semi-traumatic things that we go through in life. And the death card speaks to those. But the death card isn't telling us, I think, what's going to happen. But if you find yourself, every time you pull cards and the death card comes up, you're like, great, who's going to die now? If that's where you're at, maybe give the death card a keyword or something so you can start to remind yourself that it means something else. Another thing that you can do, and listen, I'm a purist, I would never do this, but there are people that would definitely benefit from this. Don't use a deck that has death as the title. A lot of Marseille decks, for example, use card 13, and that can help reframe. A lot of decks retitle that card something like transformation. Is it going to change how you view that card when it comes up in a spread if you know that's what it is? Maybe, maybe not, but it might help. And this is the piece that I would never do. Sorry, I said I would never do that, but all of that I would do. The thing I would probably never do, but that I know some people have been helped by, is just take the card out of your freaking deck. Be like, universe, I don't want to know about death and endings when I pull cards. I don't. I'm going to take that out. We're going to let the chips fall where they are. I think the tarot will probably still tell you. I think you'll still see it. You'll just see it in other cards. But so I don't know if that's really a help, but you might need a break from the death card. You might need a break from reading tarot, and that's valid too. You might want to only read with the oracle for a while. There's things you can do so you can kind of like get past that experience, but there's no right answer. It's just what's going to be right for you. I hope that helps. Welcome to the Unicorn Fam, Corey. Y'all are amazing. Thank you for that. I'm going to check the chat and see if I missed any questions, but that was everything on my list. Oh, Corey said, which membership? Did somebody answer your question, Corey, already? It's Magical Unicorns and Up that we do the Let's Play every month. And that's new. I only started that 2 months ago. I think this is our third one. But I have a feeling it's sticking because we're loving it. So it's around for now, for sure. And that's also the membership level where I do a monthly live stream where I give readings. So I do, everybody that submits a question gets a reading, and I read them from a list. So I put a community post out, and everybody who's a magical unicorn or a badass unicorn submits a question if they want a reading, and I will go through that list. And I usually stream for like 6 to 8 hours on average when I'm doing that. So they're like a whole full day. We just hang out together and I'm just doing readings. So that's also at the magical unicorn and up level. Badass unicorns, we also have an additional live stream where we do self-worth work, and that's at the badass level. So if you're curious about the tiers, supportive is access to the Facebook group. We do book club stuff, and book club is casual, like it's not anything super involved, but that's kind of the coffee, buy me a coffee tier is the basic membership, supportive unicorn. But you do get access to the Facebook group, and so you'll get access to things like deck study club posts, book club posts. Well, we don't do book club posts, but we do a book club live stream once a month on YouTube, so you'll be access to that kind of thing. But yeah, if you guys have questions about membership, just hit me up and I will answer them. Thank you for gifting a membership, Marlena. I don't know who got it, but congratulations whoever got it, and welcome to the fam. Yeah, I love the self-worth chats too. That's me and Peggy, and we just dig in deep on self-worth topics. We actually just spent about 1.5 years going through my book, The Self-Worth Path, and doing the work related to that. But we're just in transition now to doing more open-ended topics. And half of what you've talked about is in your book. If half of what you've talked about is in your book, you're very much convincing me to get it. Oh, good. Good. Yeah, it's my first tarot book. I do have an idea for a second one that I'm hoping to start work on soonish. And we'll see where that one goes, but that one will be a very different vibe. So let's see. So Astra says, I'm new to tarot. I'm struggling with interpreting some spread positions that are kind of inverted. The question at the card, such as in a deck interview, what are your weaknesses? And you got the 4 of Pentacles. So that's a great card to actually look at both sides of the card energy. So for the 4 of Pentacles, I'll show you mine from my Unicorn's Journey Tarot. The 4 of Pentacles often shows a character, like in the Rider-Waite-Smith. Here, I'll compare them so you can see. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, we see a guy who's got 4 pentacles. 2 are under his feet. 1 he's clutching tightly in front of his heart, and the other one's sitting on his head. And he's far away from whatever this town or city is or village is in the background, right? He's far away. He's off by himself. And so the idea is that, and actually I'll show you mine too. So in mine, Mystic, focus on the card, please. Thank you. Mystic, our little unicorn, has accumulated all these baskets of gems, and there's 4 locks on their door inside their little hobbity cottage that they're in right now. They're so concerned about protecting their resources, their money or whatever it is that they are clinging to physically. They're so attached to clinging to that they're having this complicated relationship with the idea of security or of protecting one's resources. So an example of that would be trying so hard, like let's say you've saved up $500, right? And you're trying so hard to hold on to that $500 that you're afraid to do anything. Somebody invites you out for coffee. You're like, I don't want to touch my $500. Like that's my protection. Like that's my security. And so you can end up actually getting in your own way. So when you talk about what are your weaknesses in a deck, and you get the 4 of Pentacles, and you get an answer about a complicated relationship with security or risk, like are you being risk averse? Are you being security minded? Are you being smart and not overspending? Or are you being a little bit thrifty to your own detriment? Are you isolating yourself from people? Anyway, okay. So that's like my understanding of the 4 of Pentacles. But now in the answer to a question like with a deck, what is your weaknesses? Okay, well, the weakness to me is that the deck, 4s are stability cards. So it'll be a good steady reader, but it's probably not going to go out on a ledge and like show you things that maybe are a little out of the box. It's going to be pretty steady Eddie. It's not going to maybe take a lot of risks in the types of, you're not going to see a lot of, not risk. What's the word I'm looking for? A lot of like, yeah, out of the box. You're not going to get a lot of out of the box stuff, from that reading. You're probably going to get pretty predictable answers is how I would probably interpret that in that spread. But you can interpret it in a number of ways. You think about what the card means, what it's about, and then you sort of apply it to the position. So in general, if you get a spread position that's like inverted, in other words, you're getting a more negative reading, like the obstacle, how do you interpret that card through that? You ideally have a comprehensive understanding of the card and can then apply that shadowy side to the answer of the question. Yay. Oh, well, welcome, Ellen Jem. Here's the question I asked above, so you don't have to scroll for it. Oh, you're still typing. Okay, I'll wait for you, Michelle. Let me start a few more questions. We're probably going to wrap up in the next 10, 15 minutes because I can feel my voices doing stuff, which is actually pretty well trained because, like I said, I do those like 8-hour member streams. So like I'm fine, but I do have stuff to do. So we'll see where we end up here. But let me do this next few, and then we'll see where we end up. Okay, so we have, is it difficult to do a past life reading when you make a video about it? I do have plans, hopefully, to make a member video about it. I say member video because it's a more personal topic to me, and I'd like to make that video in a more intimate setting. So I will probably make that a magical unicorn and up video at some point. I don't know exactly when. So maybe we'll cover it as a let's play or something, and we'll talk through kind of my method and like what I do. But my approach is not common, I would say. So I will say, most of the time it's a tricky type of reading to do, and you really need to figure out a way to do it that works for you personally, because you really need to harmonize your beliefs about past lives and reincarnation and that kind of thing, and then frame the reading around your beliefs. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense to you. Does that make sense? So I think it's important when developing something like that maybe it's not as helpful to just take an off the shelf method and use it, because it has to work for you. And I think part of the reason I've been hesitant to make a video about my method in detail is because my method is hard to quantify and explain. I will do my best, but yeah, watch for that in an upcoming member video. I've just got to make some time to actually record it. And then we had Observant Ori. We should make tarot excessively practical again. The French world is way more practical than us. It's so hard. Oh, for some reason I thought this was a question. Yeah, I think sometimes the woo does make it harder or make it feel less accessible. I don't disagree, but at the same time, there's benefit to both ways of reading. I mean, I did a whole series on kind of bringing back out the woo again into tarot. And so I did a couple videos on that series because I believe both have value. It's just how you approach it. Okay, Vanessa has a question. I have small hands. Do you have any practical advice for working with larger size decks or breaking in cards with stiffer cardstock? Oh, yeah, like I would say breaking in cards. I mean, I know that Dawn Michelle once took a deck that had really stiff, that US Games really stiff cardstock, and she literally like mauled the card. Like she like ran it on the edge of a table and like literally crumpled it and uncrumpled it, like just to break down the cardstock, break down the fibers and make it more soft and pliable. I obviously wouldn't do that with a deck you are invested in it working on, but some stiff cards just continue to feel stiff, and some of them are just not workable. Like I've had decks I just can't work with because they just hurt my hands, so they're physically uncomfortable. I'm spoiled because my hands are pretty strong and pretty stretchy. I think that's years of yoga, honestly, legitimately, because I did so much like hand stuff in yoga. But yeah, it's a challenge. I would say working with a stiffer cardstock or bigger cards. Let me grab like the Mons Tarot. This might be a good example. So this deck is bigger than standard. Oh, mine's trimmed. I forgot. Oh, I've got one. Hold on. Let me grab my. Oh, wow. The white balance went way out. Kilter, come back to my real color of my face. Thank you, Jesus. This is the Tarot of Mystical Moments. It's kind of oracle sized, and it's a full tarot, so you know it's going to be tricky. So there's standard tarot with my Unicorn's Journey, and then there's the Tarot of Mystical Moments. So there's a few things you can do that may or may not be helpful to you. One thing is you can side shuffle. I find side shuffling a little tricky, but if the deck is big enough, it does work. So you take the deck side to side, and that's if you want to, and you give it a little bit of bend if you can, and you sort of drop the cards, and then you can get a mix that way. So that's one way. Corner shuffling sometimes can be helpful. So this is where now if you want to avoid reversals, you take the deck, split it, flip one all the way over, so it's upside down like that. And then you put it on the table, you kind of brace it, and you try to shuffle just the corners together like that. You'll see, the first person I saw shuffle that way was Ethany. On her videos, I would see her shuffle this way. So I taught myself kind of a version of it. It's not the same, but you just, again, you shuffle it. One side is upside down, and you brace the deck on the table and lift just the corner and shuffle it that way. Boop, boop, like that. Like that. Obviously, we have hand over hand. And What's the other thing? I'm trying to think of what else I do. Side shuffling and corner shuffling are probably the only ones I really do, but that's because I like a riffle. And side shuffle when the decks are really stiff. This is pretty stiff. It's mostly dropping the cards, and it doesn't always work. As you see, they kind of stick together. The last thing you can do, which is great if you have small hands, or if your hands hurt, sometimes riffling hurts. Like if you've got arthritis or something, or a repetitive motion problem, then like, yeah, it's really hard. Pick an odd number greater than 3. So 5, 7, 9, something like that. And this is something that is it casinos? I can't remember where I first heard this, but they'll do this to mix the deck. And you just create piles. You just make sure you make odd numbers greater than 7, or greater than 3, sorry. So here's 6, so I'd go 7. And then you just boop, 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 and you just deal them out into 7 piles. I pick an odd number and a big number so that you know they're well mixed. But yeah, you do that. And when you're all done, you pick them all up, stack up all the piles in different whatever stacks, put them together, and then they should be pretty well mixed. And if you want to really get them thoroughly mixed, do that process 2 or 3 times, focusing on your question. It'll still work. And I've seen even some people, I think it was Julie at Peekaboo Rose, do a system where she rolled dice. She had a dice system. No, she kept the cards in order. I think it was either dice, or she had little pieces of paper or little tokens that had the numbers 1 through 78, and she would draw the tokens and then pull that card, right? So you could do something like that too, depending. I mean, frankly, if I can't shuffle it, it's not going to stay in my collection because I need to be able to shuffle. And I don't mind if I have to hand over hand shuffle or something, or if I have to do a different kind of shuffle. But if I can't figure it out, I'm probably not keeping the deck, because I am not motivated enough to do this system where you like roll dice. I mean, I like dice, but like, you know what I mean? But yeah, doing the piles is really easy. It's a little slow, but it works really well. And it's a valid method of mixing. Okay. Let me see if we have any last stragglers questions. I know, Michelle, you had a question and I'm trying to find it. Hold on. Yeah, the unicorn fam is great. We have such a great group that's super supportive of each other. It's really wonderful in there. Okay, I'm trying to find, I know, Michelle, you were retyping your question, but I don't see it. You said, here's the question I asked above, so you don't have to scroll for it. I will scroll for it if it's still in my scrollability. You know, it cuts me off after a certain point, but let me just scroll and see if I can find it, because I'm not finding it. And I don't know if it's like hiding it from me. So the last comment I see from you before that, Michelle, is that you love the empowering and disempowering distinction as opposed to good, bad. So I might have missed it. So I don't see it retyped anywhere. So Michelle, if you're still here and want to type it again, I will snag it this time. Because yeah, I've scrolled quite far and I'm not finding it. If I've missed your question and you're not Michelle, also please feel free to retype your question. I'll be here for another 5 minutes or so. You just did, not coming through? No. If you're copying and pasting, I would say try to retype it and do it shorter. There might be some word that's in it that YouTube is filtering out. But I'm not even seeing that it's being filtered out, which is weird. Let me try it in pieces. Yeah, try that. Do I read for myself when I'm going through a rough emotional time? It depends. If I need comfort, absolutely. If I'm just looking for like a little advice and a little comfort to see myself through a rough time, yes. I spoke about affirmation cards I'll use when I'm just really emotionally vulnerable and tender, and I need to be told that it's going to be okay, but also I need my pain acknowledged. I use Kimberly Sands' Align Heart Affirmation Oracle. I love it for that. That's why I call it my Linus blanket deck. I talked about that earlier. But in the occasions when I've been going through really, really rough interpersonal stuff, where I'm at a loss and I don't know what to do, and I'm really struggling, that is when I will reach out to other pro readers, so that pro readers who I trust, who I know have a reading style that aligns with what I need or what I'm looking for, or how I read, or whatever quality makes me feel good going to them. And then I will book a reading. But 99% of the time, I read for myself. The times where I've needed to do that, probably I can count on like less than 5. And they've been big life-altering kind of things, where I didn't want to be rash. I was worried I had too much bias or emotional bias in the situation, and I really wanted an outside perspective. But most of the time, I really do work through things with my own readings. Most of the time. Yeah, this is a valid point too. Marlena says, I tend not to read when I'm really angry. When I've calmed a little, I use a deck that I call Rage Deck to help me process anger. Michelle, I have no idea why nothing's coming through. That's very strange. Can you wait? Send me a Facebook message. I know we're friended on there. Send me a Facebook message and then I'll go grab it from over there. I don't know why YouTube's being dumb. So reading when angry can be as useful as journaling when angry, by which I mean when I'm angry or I'm really spun up about something, I can journal and just like, blah, like just throw everything out and not care. Like, let it be irrational. Let it not make any sense. I can pull the tower card and be like, yeah, burn it down. But I know not to take that seriously. I know that I'm looking for something. Then sometimes you'll be in a burn it down mood and you'll pull out some cards and they'll tell you to like calm the hell down and like stop being so full of yourself. You know what I mean? So sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes it can make you feel validated. And plus, I don't actually like to bring angry energy to my cards, which I want to come with a right relationship in a way of being open to receiving wisdom from a higher source, I guess you could say. So I like to bring that to my readings, but yeah, let me open up my messenger for poor Michelle, whose question is just not coming through. And I'll just copy it in. Yeah, that's so weird. It's strange because it's not like if YouTube like filters it, it usually shows it to me. So I'm going to type Michelle's question in and enter it and see if it'll take it. Yeah, it's taking it. I don't know what's happening over there, Michelle. Okay, so this is Michelle's question. How much does the meaning of a card change depending on the depiction in the deck you're using? So for example, traditional versus intuitive impression, how much weight do you give each? Okay, so this is, again, a complex question. So I'm going to try to answer. So here's the Five of Wands, right? And that's the traditional way to see it. There's who's got the biggest stick. And yes, it probably means exactly what you're thinking when I say that way. Anyways, so there's a competition vibe, right? In my deck, I depict it this way. And the reason I depict it this way is because oftentimes we see competition as a negative thing, as conflict, and sometimes it is conflict. But oftentimes we are stepping into power, establishing ourselves as worthy of having a voice, learning how to put our hat in the ring, so to speak, learning how to recognize that we are allowed to step forward and be a part of the conversation. And that can be a self-worth message. So I depict mine in the sense of this is a competition in this story that is typically meant for dragons and these fire unicorns. Now, Mystic, who's our main character, has been practicing the same type of magic that is typically tested in this circumstance. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to enter the competition. And I'm going to put my neck out there and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and I'm going to give it a try. And of course, because it's my deck and I can make the story end any way I want, Mystic wins the competition and learns a valuable lesson about how if you don't play, you can't win. So that's a specific depiction. But how do you know, or how much does that apply to the reading is going to depend on a case-by-case basis. So, you know, here's why I don't work with the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot as far as I don't use it to do readings for myself or others. I literally have this as a reference deck and that's it. And here's why. Because these images, if you've studied tarot for a period of time, these images are referenced constantly. They're the images I use in my book because it's the universal sort of language that most of us speak when we're talking about tarot. These images are always in my mind. So if I pull my Five of Wands from the Unicorn's Journey Tarot, or Five of Fire, if I pull that card, I'm thinking about this card and what it looks like. And this image is in my mind because it's always in my mind. Like I know what this is. It's always there. It's always a layer. So I always work with this layer and whatever's on the card. And that is why I like working with decks that are a variety of decks, because for me, that's actually part of the intuitive process. When a person books a reading with me or when I'm reading for my members or whatever, the deck that I choose in that moment, whether from my entire collection, such as in the case of a client reading, or in my member readings where I'm usually choosing from a small selection of 5, and that's only if the person doesn't request a deck. When I'm choosing a deck, I'm choosing it based on what energy do I need for this reading? Oh, I need this one. If somebody asks me a self-worth question, I'm going to pull this one every single time, probably, because this is a deck very much themed around the concepts of self-worth, personal empowerment, personal growth, etc. So a question like that, I'm going to probably reach for this. And I'm going to reach for this because I know the depictions are going to pull me in that direction. Let's say I'm reading a question about something really, I froze. I don't know if I froze for y'all. Let's say I'm reading a question that is really based on something practical and grounded, like a money question or a work question. I might pull a Rider-Waite-Smith clone deck or a pip deck, something that's got a very neutral vibe and isn't going to pull me into all these like wonky interpersonal things, because the question isn't about that. The question is about work, right? So then I'm going to try to grab a deck where the visuals aren't going to distract me too much from the core question, in which case I'm more working with these in my head. I'm just using something else visually because I'm finicky and I like to look at other pretty pictures besides the Rider-Waite-Smith. It's just not art that excites me. It just isn't. So I'll grab something else. But so I would say, how do you know, or how much does it impact? It always impacts me to some degree. I'm never looking at a card. I shouldn't say never. I'm rarely looking at a card and reading it from the perspective of, here's what this card generally means. I'm usually reading it from what is jumping out at me in that moment. So I pull the Fool. And in this Fool, there's a tiny little ladybug. And in most Fools, you'll see some sort of creature. Maybe it's a white dog or it's a white cat or something. There's usually a creature along with the Fool. This is part of its symbology. So depending on the reading, I might be focused on the main character of the card, in this case, Mystic, or this little unicorn to be, or I'm going to be focused on the ladybug. And maybe in this case, for some reason, my eye goes right to the ladybug and I'm like, this is about the ladybug this time. Then I'm going to read it that way. And that is part of an intuitive process, which I go into in great detail in my intuitive tarot reading course. In my intuitive tarot reading course, I teach an entire method for how to do that, how to work with a card, not based on what it means in a memorized way, but based on what it's telling you in the moment. And there's two methods. One is very like left-brained and one is more right-brained, to put it simply. There's two methods I teach in that course. One takes you down a very like studious kind of intellectual path, and one takes you down a much more creative path. And some people will use one of those methods or the other, or will use both. And so that's the premise of my intuitive tarot reading course, and ideally the premise of my next book. We'll see though. I got to get off my butt and start writing it. That's the thing. So yeah. I always say I'm going to go, but I love these so much. Thank you for joining the Unicorn Fam, Grumpy Schnauzer and Nicole. Welcome. Okay, so let's see. Why is it not? Okay, there we go. Carla says, I don't read for myself, but I have a feeling that Mystic will help me break that fear. Can't wait to have your deck. I'm so excited. Y'all, we're so close. We're so close. Like, we're so close. Like, they're almost ready to ship. Not to customers, sorry. They're almost ready to ship from the printer to my fulfillment center, but that's like, we're close. So yeah, it's very exciting. Do you still see Four of Cups as boredom / dissatisfaction? What about emotional stability? Yes, this is such a good question. Let's look at the book, because I was so proud of this word, because it took me a long time to kind of come up with. So we're going to look at two places, actually, to identify how I look at this card. And I apologize to those of you who just want to be surprised, because I'm like sharing so much from this, but numbers. Okay. So fours for me are stability. That's how I identify four energy. And I talk about four energy in this part of the book. Okay. And then the Four of Cups, my keyword is stagnancy. Now, this keyword does lean more negative. There's probably an even better keyword, right, for this. But let me show you visually in my deck how I depicted it. I showed it earlier, but let me pull it again. So the Four of Cups looks like this in my deck. Now, there's nothing unhappy or unpleasant necessarily about this card. Mystic is super comfy, really relaxed, and is looking out at these three nymphs playing in the water, these little sea creatures. Behind her is the King of Cups, or the King of Water, and he's literally splashing, trying to get her attention, and she's just kind of oblivious because things are cool. She's good. She doesn't need to look at that, right? So here's the thing about the Four of Cups. Yes, it is, as a four, all the fours bring stability, all of them. But where does that stability tip over and become a rut or become stagnancy? Where do we stop just being comfortable and stable and start taking things and people and situations in our life for granted? And I think oftentimes the Four of Cups illuminates for us where we've become complacent or begun taking things about our life for granted that we rely on, but we're not actually feeling a full sense of contentment, right? There's a subtle discontent to that stability. Stability is good. And sometimes that's all it means when the Four of Cups comes up is emotional stability. That's it. And that's great. Read it that way. But then sometimes for me, there's this subtle undercurrent of, or maybe a warning of, enjoy the stability, but make sure that in that stability, you're not becoming complacent. You're not missing opportunity. On the flip side, sometimes when this card comes up, it's very much pointing to somebody's general dissatisfaction or malaise, in which case you might be doing this whole grass is greener on the other side thing, in which case those situations, my question would be, or my statement would be, the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. What are you nourishing in your life and what are you ignoring? And that will tell you a lot about what's happening in your general sense of stagnancy or discontent, right? So that's kind of how I read it roughly. Thank you for gifting a membership, Laura. Okay. And then, okay, we have a question. Okay. What do I do when the sun jumps out and the Fool is behind you? It's contextual. I'm going to just leave it at that, Joyful Dolphin. It's going to depend on the question. It's going to depend on the reading, but the combination of the Sun and the Fool, you can read it a whole number of ways. I'm not going to pin it down to one specific because it would definitely be contextual for me, but yeah, hopefully that helps, y'all. I love answering questions. I will try to do another one of these in a little bit. I haven't done one for ages. Yay! Welcome to the Unicorn Fam, Julia. Y'all, if you want the opportunity to be gifted a membership, make sure you have opted in. I should have a link below that talks about how to do that. I'm not fully the most tech savvy and talking you through the process. It's a YouTube thing, but yeah. You are so welcome, Observant Ori. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me for this. I love doing these. Again, I will try to put another one out soon. So keep an eye out on the community tab. I use my community tab on YouTube so much, y'all. So if you want to stay up to date on what's going on here on the channel or be able to take part in things like surveys, I do a series on my channel called This or That, which is a decluttering series. And in that video, I pair decks up against each other and decide which is going to stay and which is going to go. But before I film that video, I roll out surveys of those same pairs and ask the community, what would you keep and what would you let go? Like basically, you're supposed to vote on which one you would keep of the two. But I roll those out. In fact, I had one just go out the Friday, I think. So if you want to be able to participate in things like that, make sure you are subscribed and you've clicked the bell and you keep an eye out on my community tab for posts because I do a lot of my interactive thing, my announcement things there. So I hope that is helpful. I appreciate you all so much. So yeah, be sure and subscribe. Thank you for hanging out. As always, I love doing this. And in the future, I will do another one and I will do the same thing I did this time, which is put a community post up. So if you can't attend live, you can still list your questions and I can still get to them during the live, which I was able to do today. So lots and lots of fun. I am so jazzed. I love these so much, but thank you. And again, just a quick reminder, because I've got to be better about plugging my own work and I'm trying to be better. Unlocking the Tarot is due for publication October 8th in the US. I'm not sure what those dates are going to look like in Canada or the UK or Australia. I'm assuming about a month or two later, but I don't know that yet. Galley copies like this are rolling out to reviewers right now. So keep an eye on social media. I know that, oh my gosh, I'm only thinking of a first name. Logan on Instagram. What is Logan's Instagram name? If anybody knows, throw it in the chat. Logan just got a review copy. I know Krista of Crystal Chronicles got a review copy. I believe Jen Sankey got a review copy. Keep an eye out on these people to hear their thoughts on the book. I'm going to be filming a podcast episode for Wildly Tarot podcast. I'm filming that with the host of that podcast on Monday. I don't know when that episode's coming out, but probably fairly soon. Larkin Legend. Thank you. Logan of Larkin Legend. And there's other reviewers that probably have received it that I can't remember their names. I'm so sorry, but so grateful to everybody who is talking about the book and reviewing it. My tarot deck, Unicorn's Journey Tarot, pre-orders are closing really, really soon. So if you are interested in this deck, this is literally last call for pre-orders. I'm going to be locking down all of those soon so that we can do all the shipping. And then once all the Kickstarter and pre-order shipping is done, then I will put extra copies on my Etsy shop, but there's probably going to be a gap where you can't get this. And that's not to say FOMO. There is extra copies. Don't panic. It's all good. But I'm going to need a little bit of recovery time. And lastly, just so I don't forget to tell you all, Peggy's tarot deck, the Sassy Dragons Tarot, is hopefully, cross all the fingers, going to hit Kickstarter around October. It's being painted now. Make sure that you are following me on Instagram as well as Little Dark Arts. Arts is with a Z, on Instagram. and me. I'm just at Lisa Papez on Instagram, because we're going to be rolling out previews of the art. I've already rolled out one in my stories, but I'll be putting out more previews of the art as we get a little closer to the campaign. That deck is nearing completion, and it is super adorable. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone where everything has been dragonified in the Little Dark Arts art style, which if you don't know their art style, oh my God, it's so dang cute. Let me show you. I can't stop. These are just the announcements phase. It's okay if y'all have to drift off. It's okay. I understand. Oh, this isn't the right deck. I grabbed the wrong deck. Okay, well, I don't know where it is. It's out somewhere. Oh, wait. Am I dumb? It's right here. This is their art style. If you have not seen these guys, they're incredibly talented artists, super cute. But the Sassy Dragons Tarot is a really adorable dragony Rider-Waite-Smith with meanings right on the cards. And there's going to be a clean, family-friendly version and a not safe for work, naughty, sweary version. But they will essentially have the meanings right on the cards. So they'll be super beginner friendly. Peggy brought all of the sass, and then I sort of underscored her sass with a little bit of concrete tarot meaning underneath that. So the meanings will have like a straightforward meaning and then also a little sassy, playful meaning as well. So it'll hopefully really bring the cards to life, especially for beginners. But I think it's going to be such a fun deck. And it's going to be the same size. I should have been prepared, but whatever. We're just in babbly excited to talk about the projects mode. It's going to be the same size as like this deck, which is the Pipsqueak Tarot. And just to give you an idea, for those of you with small hands, this is it's just the same shape as tarot, but just a little bit smaller. And we're hoping that this deck is going to be, it should definitely be more affordable than Unicorn's Journey Tarot was. We're trying to make it accessible. It's not going to have a big guidebook because the meanings are right on the cards. It's just going to have a little bit of something fun in there, but mostly it's just going to be the cards with the meanings right on them. That's coming to Kickstarter in October. I'll keep you posted. And the companion Oracle deck to this deck sometime next year. I'm trying to not say a specific time anymore because everything's been crazy, but next year will be the Unicorn's Journey Oracle. So keep an eye out for that too. Okay, those are all the things for now. There were so many. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk of all the things I'm doing. But thank you all so much. As always, extra big thank you goes out to my Unicorn Fam channel members for supporting my work in such a tangible way. Y'all have quite literally changed my life. Every project I just told you about would never have happened without the membership. And I mean that from the very bottom of my heart. Like, it would not have happened. I would have never done it. So you all have literally changed my life and helped all of these projects come to life. And I am so eternally grateful. Every time I start to talk about it with this much detail, I start to cry. So I'm going to stop, but I'm so grateful. So thank you so much to the Unicorn Fam and to everybody for participating on the channel. And as I always like to say, until next time, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, y'all. Now there's the awkward pause while I wait for the stream to end.